predominantly from a business background because, game developers are great at writing code and making games, but some so great at running businesses. So people from backgrounds, marketing backgrounds, social media backgrounds, business backgrounds, there's tons of jobs available that's not related to sitting in front of. The ideal goal is that you get those people and you get the people who make the game and they work together and you're successful. So, if you're like me and couldn't do maths ever, there's jobs for you.
Georgia, that's often overlooked, but the turnover is high enough, and there's enough companies that it's definitely something. Either programmer or artist coming out of school, or even designer. You might not be able to get into the game. Hi-Res might not be hiring, or you might have to start a QA if you try Hi-Res or something else. But there's gaming industries, gamblers, slot machine people, whatever. And it's definitely a related skill because you're still trying to hook somebody that's visual, that has things popping around. And either both artists or programmers.
And audio and QA.
Yeah, actually, right. And you're just about everybody. That's not a bad place to start, and it's definitely not a bad stepping stone. But as always, it's a trap. You got to be careful. You got to be careful of the comfort level, and there's the always be closing that's mentioned in Glengarry Glen Ross, right? My rule is always be looking. That you should always be looking for your next job at whatever job you're at. Now, you don't want to sort of become the guy that everybody knows is always looking, but you should always be
aware of opportunities.
Opportunities, correct. And but again, the gaming industry is actually quite strong up in Atlanta. There's several companies and
huge,
so forth. And then there's companies that are you don't think of as the big ones, but they have definitely enough people and money behind or whatever and so forth. The big thing I would also caution against is, you got to be careful of any company that's what I would call in abusing intern mode.
Mm-hmm.
You want to value yourself. As soon as you stop valuing yourself, you'll eventually regret it or burn out or whatever. But people should pay you for your work, whether it's piecemeal or whatever. Now, interns, it depends on what you're interning and doing, but if it's a set 6-week thing or whatever, that might. But most of the really good internships are also paid. I mean, I know somebody's out here from California working for Cartoon Network right now on a nice. In fact, he got we spoke out in GDC at this mentor thing, and he was worried about whether he should ask for more money because it didn't seem like they were giving him enough to really subside, while here. And he was worried about losing it if he asked. And we pretty much, it was me and another guy, pretty much assured him that if he asked the question and wasn't an asshole about it, he wasn't going to just lose the intern. And he actually asked, and they gave him more money. So
Turner did one.
It's what?
Turner did. Wow.
Yeah. So that was nice. But again, you don't want to devalue yourself. And really, as I said in my talk earlier, I've never been hired for a job I was really qualified for. So as long as you can see it's the next step, they're not going to hire you for 7 levels up the ladder, unless you get really lucky. I've been hired for a job, and you walk in the door, and he goes, "Good news, bad news." What's the bad news? Bad news is that guy that was going to do the Windows stuff, didn't show up. I said, well, that's good because I don't know Windows, and he was supposed to help out to get this demo. He says, yeah, well, the good news is you still got a job, and the demo's on Monday. So it's, it's just there's plenty. Just keep, there's lots.
And you'd ask about the specific roles.
Right.
With Siege in October, we have a number of different tracks. We have the art track, the audio track, the design track, the programming track, and the business track. And this is kind of a good way to break down the actual jobs that are in the industry. So artists, we know the traditional modeler, texturer, renderer path that you'll have at a bigger studio, a smaller studio. That's often the same person. I'm sorry, the modeler, texture, and then animator slash rigger, or animator slash rigger. But if you also need a UI artist, every little button and every little border, everything needs someone to have drawn it, so that can be you. Technical artists has become a great position, a mix of programming ability and art skills. And this means different things at different companies. At some companies, it's the programmer who makes the tools for the artists. At others, it's the artist who can talk to the programmers and get them to make it. So make sure you know how they're defining these terms. You've got the 2D pixel pushers we still need in the industry. We still need concept artists in the industry. So a lot of those roles, the ZBrush artists are in high demand, always. Good ZBrush artists are always important. You go to the audio side, you've obviously got the composers and the musicians who are making the music and the scoring for it, but you need the sound effects engineers who can do great sound effects and match together sound effects. You need folks who can oversee a good voiceover session, and marketing now is often pretty well tied into the audio side because they need great audio for any ads that they're going to put out anywhere. On the design side, design is the most meaningless term in game design. So there's so many different design roles now. You've got the overall game designer who's theoretically laying out the whole thing and can be anybody. You've got level designers. I like the role of AI design, where I can sit down. We were talking about this earlier. How is the AI supposed to react in certain situations? I'm not going to actually program it, but I'll say, here's what it should do in all the different situations and why, and percentage chance will do this, that, or the other. The narrative designer slash writer is an important one to add in. I love the fact that there's some companies with the audio design job as well, where they're not necessarily making the audio, they are saying, here's what it should be and how it should lay out. Do you want me to go through all the jobs first? You have a comment on that one? Well, if you had more step ones. Yeah, there are number one. There are a lot of different roles on business, marketing, PR, the executive side. QA often falls under the business side, but again, a good branch into everything because you learn everything the company does. And on the programming side, I hope a lot of you are in CS. I mean, you do see general game programmers, but often it does become the specialist role of engine programmers. We don't have as many graphics programmers we used to have, but that used to be a major one. Obviously, the AI coder,
support art
networking
too, by
specialist.
the way.
Pardon?
So support art, like things like cards, things that aren't used in game.
Graphic design.
Nowadays, it's not just the game.
Right.
It's, well, yeah, but
the graphic designer.
I know somebody that does cards for high res, I think, for instance.
Right.
Paladins have cards. Or
right, card designer. Yeah, good graphics designers come into it. Security folk are important in the game industry. Yes, if you know the security side, that's critical. So we've got all these different disciplines now. It's just amazing, all within the bigger areas. So I hope that answered your question. Yes, you had a question.
Yeah, one thing I was curious about, you kept bringing up that I didn't really think about. Actually, you brought it up first. Audio tech. I don't know much about it. I haven't heard much about it. I'm kind of curious. Like, what does it take to really get into that? It's like, I mean, you hear about the typical programs that people use for, like, code or or art or whatever. But like, I don't really hear much about audio tech. So I'm kind of curious. I might be definitely something into.
Sure.
I like sound.
Yeah. So originally that started out with guys that were just sound designers, and they would create cool sound palettes of stuff. But in the video game, everything's nonlinear, so that sound palette has to move around somehow. Originally, we prototyped that stuff up, and like things like Maximus P or Native Instruments Reactor or something like that should just get this is what it would sound like if it was dynamic. We would write out what all that logic would be, hand it to a coder, they would actually code it. Now, there's tools that specifically deal with that. You've got Wise, you've got FMod, you even have Unity itself that can make those things interactive. And that's a major role for any studio doing like any kind of game design. Sometimes they actually just farm out the sound design, and then they just have their integrators that deal with getting all those sounds working correctly. A lot of studios still have a little bit of both. It also goes a step further when you're talking about like all the dialogue and the engine that drives the commentary. It's like if you're playing a game of Madden, most people never even question the fact that that game is actually calling out dialogue as events unfold. How does it know that? It's not predictive, right? It's actually matching context. It's matching what AI is doing and how it's reacting, what your score is, what your traditional plays were, and it's matching that code up, and it'll say, this is the match, and here's the line that goes with that. There's guys that just do that, you know. So, yeah, it's pretty diverse. So, you know, if you want to start, like, looking into what makes that all work, you know, Wise is a great example, Fmod's a great example. Also, there's a lot of audio stuff in Lua scripting as well. So, yeah.
And I forgot a number of other jobs. Sorry about this. I'm going to jump back to it because that reminded me. User experience designer, user interface design, community management, social media side of this. These are all good areas, and a lot of these are entry level now. So, all right. Sorry about that. Wanted to jump off that. You had a question.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. We got one online.
Oh, do you want to do?
We'll do the audience first. You should be here. We'll do the audience first, and then we'll go online.
Okay, so I watched this stream by learnsphere.com. They're a professional site for artists, like they teach artists. They're all professionals, and I noticed them mention that being in the art industry is very difficult and very challenging. And I just wanted to know what you could say about this, and I also want to know, as game developers, what qualities of an artist are you looking for your games? And lastly, is there any advice you can give for aspiring game artists?
So what qualities do game devs look for in game artists? What advice can you give aspiring game devs? And is the art industry as brutal and grotesque as we hear? Joe!
Fast, cheap mind reader. Seriously, I mean, it's a balance. But the biggest thing was, the biggest thing to let go of, I think, I would give an artist coming up. I had one that was really good that I picked because she did a 15-minute video. She posted a 15-minute video of a 24-hour process she did in 8 hours of this postcard of this Wonder Woman-like character with Seppi. And when I saw that, I'd already seen some of her art that I really liked. I knew she could do just about anything. It would be fast enough and whatever. And we negotiated. So she was actually okay on the fast, and I wouldn't say cheap, but you get what you pay for, so that's okay. But on the mind reading side, she constantly wanted feedback, and I realized early on that any feedback I gave her made it worse. So one time, reality came to head. She was just very, very frustrated. She wanted feedback, kept asking. She always frustrated, anxiety. And I finally made her look me once right in the eye. Said, I won't use her name, but said, look me in the eye. I'm going to tell you what I want from you. What I want is you not to care about what I want. Okay? I do trust your judgment. We can always go back if I have to. And I'll tell you, good or whatever, but I'm not going to micromanage. It makes it worse whenever I do. And I don't want to see 3 or 4 things for me to pick. I want you to use your judgment as an artist and give me your best right off the bat of what you think would fit. And then if on a rare occasion I give you, feedback, I will. But early on we did the feedback route, and it was just horrible. And it would take me like a paragraph trying to express what did or didn't bother me about some specific thing. And then whatever change got made was just worse. Because it's sort of like, think of art as flowing. And then any feedback I gave is, you painted this nice mural, I give the feedback, now it's black. It's hard coded. It's just, I'm a straight edge guy, and I don't want that influencing my art. I want a grown up too, by the way, and that has nothing to do with this particular case, but I'm not going to handhold. I'm not going to, what I want from my artist is to not have it be a burden on my time. And I want awesome stuff. And I want you to mind read in the sense of I don't want you to cut back, I have track time. I do a thing with everybody I work with that whenever they correspond to me, they always have to include current unpaid hours, so that I know how much they're spending. And that's the only micromanagement I want to do, just so that I know it's not going to get away that they're spending 10 hours on something I thought they'd do for 2. That's all I care about. And all my people, whenever I do any work, it's basically when they give me work, they get paid. And then I either have more tasks or whatever, but I don't give them tons of stuff. And all I want is them not to be, please give me the please give me feedback is the one that just, drives me crazy, because it ends up worse and it wastes my time.
Either of you want to jump on it?
Sure. When I hire artists for marketing campaigns or trailers, etc., what I'm looking for is someone who has range. I want someone who's be able to do a variety of art styles on the drop of a pin, who is able to deliver on time. Because it sounds like people say, "Oh well, of course I can deliver on time." The amount of artists that actually deliver on time is very few, and so I don't mind you being expensive rather than cheap. But if you deliver on time, good quality work, and do what the brief says, and are able to be flexible with your range, so I can, what I hate to do is have to hire a freelancer and go hire another one for something else. I just want one person that I can go to every time. So if you can do a variety of art styles, then you're hired. Job done.
And I'll say that I've had the honor to work with some of the best game artists in the business, and I know they are because now they're leads at much bigger companies than mine. Chuck Vincent over at High Res, Rob Dixon over at Kaniva, a wonderful lady I worked with who's now over at Gimme Games. Anyway, the thing that I found common among them that they did, that the great ones did, is A, they would take on the art and own it. Their own style was going into it, and it would be markedly theirs. They would definitely, this was their work, and no matter what description I gave them, their mark was all over. It was much better than anything I could have told them to have done. Secondly, they got integrated into the entire game development process. They knew everything that was going on, and the spirit of the game really came out through their art as much as anything else we could have possibly done. And third, they communicated like mad. They were constantly talking with other folks. It's not, as you're saying, what do you think about this? They're picking people's brains about the game, how should it feel, how should it look, and so forth. And these are people who've been in the game industry now for decades. So yes, it can be brutal, especially for a freelancer, but I think that the rewards that the ones I know have gotten out of it are tremendous, and they would not have been nearly as happy in any other area except maybe being paid $1 million for each painting they did. So until they get to that level, they're very happy to be in game development.
And we abuse artists just a little less than the comic book industry. If you're looking for a baseline.
We got a question online about GGDA meeting. We're actually kind of killing time until Radobondo gets in here for the GGDA meeting. So
so the question online is from Dr. Dunn on Twitch. I've been building websites for 4 years now and working in the digital marketing space for 2 years. What's the best way to start niching down and working with game developers and companies?
No clue.
And start networking. I mean, if you're not already out there meeting and talking with game devs, that is absolutely the number one place. You have a skill set that's of value to game devs. I mean, it's very funny because people, when they hear game dev, immediately think you can make websites. And it is I can make websites, but I use WordPress for that. Thank you very much. So if you have that skill set, start mixing with folks. And if you have game ideas you want to do, go to a game jam or go to a game dev meeting and start talking about it. Pardon? And Joe's also a big advocate of just going to the game jams, getting to work on it. And in the end, the best way to start working the game industry is start making a game. Nothing beats it.
I think, because you said he had digital marketing services, right? So if he's doing digital marketing and you want to appeal to game developers, you really need to go to events to get your first client, because it's really hard to do cold call a developer and say over email, hey, I would like your business. You need to go meet people.
All right, and I know we got other questions out there in the audience. I don't know if there are others online. We've got the GGDA meeting now to bust into, and then in 10 minutes, the rest of the presentation starts. So hang out and talk to the folks afterwards for continuing the AMA. Any
last questions for me? Just come up in that.
Any last questions in the chat we definitely should handle? All right, then we're going to go ahead and go into the GGA meeting. With that, bringing back
Okay.
Rod
Does
Obando.
that mean we can leave?
Yeah, go grab me with food.
Okay.
Thank you all very much. A round of applause for our panelists. And they never had time to ask me any, so I win. This is Andrew Greenberg, Executive Director of the Georgia Game Developers Association, here at SimFest 2017 at lovely Columbus State University. We've had a great day of discussions on game development. I'm here with one of our speakers right now to go into a little bit more depth about what you discussed earlier today. Hillary, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, my name is Hillary Fleener. I teach programming classes here at Columbus State University, and I'm also our outreach coordinator. So I do a lot of the outreach to the schools and to the military, trying to get computer science out to everyone.
So one of the big topics we in the game industry have to deal with is how do we create effective characters, characters who reach out to a wide audience, characters who are believable and fun and enjoyable all at once. So can you tell us a little bit about your presentation today?
So I talked today about how female video game characters have kind of changed over time, and we're definitely going in a positive direction with female characters. You know, we kind of started out in the 80s, and you know, Pac-Man got a bow, and it was Mrs. Pac-Man, which was cool. That was great. And then we kind of had some trouble in the 90s, where female characters tend to always be in bikinis or inappropriate clothing, and not given very well-developed storylines, interesting characters, interesting roles. And that is changing, luckily. You know, especially with games like Borderland, you have, you know, we talked about some other games too. They're doing a much better job. But even in 2015, though, at E3, only 9% of the playable characters that the role was specifically for that character were female, whereas 32% of them were male. So we still have a long way to go in creating interesting, dynamic, complex female characters that female gamers can relate to. And female gamers are 40% of the gaming community.
And even more so online, which brings up the question of esports and competitive gaming. Because one area we certainly see female characters in some numbers, certainly not at a majority of the numbers yet, is in esports, League of Legends, Paladin, Smite, Brawlhalla. All of these tend to have strong female characters. Do you think that the idea of having competitive gaming, where you're trying to draw in a wide audience, not just of players, but of viewers, will help inspire more people to build interesting, fun female characters for their games?
I hope so. I mean, you know, people create things for the market. They want to sell them. And in the 90s, we had kind of a cultural thing where a group of people decided that technology was for boys, and they marketed it for boys, and that's the market that they reached. And so gaming was really made up of mostly boys and men, and so that's what the games were created for. But I think now that that's changing a little bit and more women are getting into it. In the 1990s, only 3% of game developers were women. Now it's 22%. We still have a ways to go, but that's much better. But yeah, I think the more we see female characters, the more that's going to change. And luckily, I think younger males have different ideas, and they're more excited about playing female characters themselves. And you know, their attitude is changing a lot. And they did a study where they were asking about the female characters and, you know, what they thought about these sort of scantily clad characters. And a lot of the males were saying, this is unnecessary. This is really actually just detracting from the story. I want to play a realistic character. I want to play her character, and she's, you know, this is ridiculous. So it's nice to see that attitudes are changing. And I think that the more attitudes change, the more we'll see the change in the game industry.
So there's been some discussion within the game industry that while the development community is still concentrated in the United States, we are seeing greater development outside of the United States, Asia, Europe, even Africa and the Middle East. There has been some comment made that those are kind of following the U.S. model, where initially you had very limited female representation, then it was designed primarily to attract a younger male demographic, and then changed into a more mature form that would attract a greater audience. I don't know how familiar with Korean or Chinese games, if you've
You know, I'm not, and most of the research has been really concentrated on the U.S. because we have a long history. So they started the studies with games from the 80s, and they have a big breadth of games to look at, but the foreign industry is a lot newer, so they really haven't done much. But I'll be really interested to see what develops and if they move quicker or kind of what comes from that.
So what are your hopes for what will come in the future for female characters in video games?
Well, my hope is actually for both female and male characters, that we just get more diversity in characters, less stereotyping of both male characters and female characters, and just a lot more interesting, complex, good storylines, good characters that represent just a wider range of the population. And again, not just with female characters, but with male characters too. I talked to some young men who say that a lot of the male characters in video games, they don't really identify with them anymore.
Duke Nukem.
Yeah, so I would like to just see it expand for males and females, just a lot more breadth and depth in characters.
So last question, there's been a lot of discussion about how the rise of VR and MR and AR is going to affect this. As people feel themselves being actually a part of the game, are the characters going to have to be more reflective of the world in which they live? Do you see this impacting the development of characters in the future?
I do, and that's going to be a fascinating area to look at, because the more we do that, I think that, I mean, people are going to choose their avatars. There's going to be more options for building your avatar, and people are going to be choosing it. Are they going to choose it to reflect themselves, or are they going to want to have a more of a fantasy type character? And I think it will be really interesting to see. There's a lot of science fiction book that kind of speculate that's the way, you know, what people will choose to do. I mean, would I want to have an avatar that looks like me, or do I want a unicorn? I don't know. I think that'll be a really interesting area to kind of see how that develops.
I think my daughter wants to be a little teapot in her next video game, but that's a side point. Well, thank you very much, Hillary. Appreciate the interview and appreciate your presentation.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for coming to this talk. The name of the talk is One Move AI Strategy for Alchemist Descendants. I am Rodrigo Obando. I'm the founder of Ringtuple Inc. I'm just like Joe, he was talking earlier. I'm a one-man band. I'm the one that does the programming, the marketing, the art, the sound, the whatever is needed. With the help of my wife out there, also serve the coffee and breakfast for Simpest. So welcome to coming to this talk, and I want to give you here an outline of this. Is we have the introduction, which we're going to talk briefly about what I'm going to talk about. I want to give a brief, like a few sentences, sort of define what is game AI. What is it that we call game AI? It's not the same as artificial intelligence in general, or anything like deep learning that we hear so much about. Also, we've talked about AI approaches to strategy games, because The Alchemist Descendants is a strategy game. And then I'm going to talk about how is it that I approach Alchemist Ascendants, and why I took the approach that I did to actually solve the problem of providing an AI opponent, in the game. And then just a very brief conclusion, and have some answers, some questions for that. All right, so this is just my sort of advertising for Alchemist Ascendants. I published a game not long ago. It's a free to play. It doesn't have any in-app purchases or any kind of things. It's a relatively simple game. It's a strategy game. It's based on something that I work on. My day job is as a college professor. I teach computer science, and I do research in complex systems. And what I'm doing, with this game is actually using cellular automata, as the basis for my game. And that's how it all comes from. So I'm going to talk about, what the game is and how it works in a moment. So something I was thinking about, okay, I don't know how many people are actually interested in games or not making games, but I have here says something like, games are the result of craftily merging aspects of many a discipline. This is one of the things that have always attracted me about games, is that you could actually join all kinds of things together. In my case, and I tell this to sometimes that I have the opportunity with my students. When I was in high school, which was not like last year, as you can imagine, I was in many, many things. I was from arts. I was a writer, a singer, a dancer. I used to play in the band. Did all kinds of things. I was also an artist. I would draw and all these things. And I also liked mathematics and chemistry and physics and all these things, all combined. When I decided to go to college, I became an engineer, and that's where, in general, my craft took me. And I'm an electronics and electrical engineer. All through school, all the way to a PhD electrical engineer, which it doesn't give you much room for many other things. But I like many other things, even composing music whenever I had the time before. So I found that making games is actually a very nice way to just at least dabble in some of those things that you like to do. So that's why I consider games is just a conglomerate of things that you can do. Also, it's I think the questions and the question and answers that we had briefly before. What are the things you can do? Games may use expertise of programmers, 3D modelers, artists, psychologists, mathematicians, musicians, writers, and of course, game designers. All these things are together here. Now, among the programmers, and this I think Andrew Greenberg touched just briefly on. So among the programmers, there is a type of programmer called the AI programmer. The AI, for artificial intelligence. This programmer is a particular type of programmer that has a tough job, because every single AI that you create for a game is going to be different. It doesn't matter what you're doing, what you're working working on. Whatever you write is not something like I can generalize a lot, like we could do with, for instance, if we are going to be able to do something in graphics, there are things that we can do in graphics that will be used in a first-person shooter, or it can be used in many other games with use graphics. So we can generalize many of those things, but AI, in general, you have to go back and look exactly what is it that you're dealing with to create an AI. The different methods and et cetera that exist. So it's a tough job. Besides that, sometimes they might have me that they don't get respect. And I heard this that, the AI should not stop the game for publishing. Well, in my case, it did. Because a year ago, I had the game ready. I could actually play it if I play it with somebody, another human. But I didn't want to have the players having to find somebody else that didn't know how to play the game either. So I wanted to provide some sort of AI. So that's actually stopped me from publishing. I didn't have an AI, and it took me a while to really figure out, how is it that I wanted to do it, etc. So to get the AI programming, and that's more or less what I'm going to be talking about here. So the game programmer, this programmer AI, specializes in providing some type of intelligence to the game, and that's what we call game AI. So it's not just general AI; it's game AI. I know that in general, people in the industry, not the gaming industry, but people in, say, in education. Oh, wait a minute, I'm a professor too. So people in education will tell you that there is no AI in games, because it's sort of simplistic. But there is AI, and there are all kinds of algorithms that you have to implement in order for you to make that work. So, what is game AI? And this is some of the things that I've gathered, with time, etc. So, artificial intelligence may be considered any intelligence that may exist in a man-made device. I've heard that somewhere. Also, this may be achieved by something as simple as an if statement. If something says, "Ooh, there is light. Let's do this." And it sounds like, smart. We now know that, for instance, you have the lights outside, and at night, and then suddenly they turn on. They say, "Oh, this looks like intelligent." Why? They suddenly realize there is no light outside, so we need to turn the lights on. That's an if statement. That's a if no light on. That could be considered some sort of AI. It's a very simplistic AI. Then we have while statements, for loops, etc. All those kinds of things. For instance, the enemy in a game may be as simple if the player moves to the right, move the gun in that direction, shoot. Simple. But still, if you are playing the game and you see that, it seems like it is reacting towards you, to you. So there will also be finding, animation selection, even generated, automatically generated environments. Whenever you play games such as, let's see, a game that was mentioned today, Assassin's Creed. You will need to go to some place for a quest or mission. Then you're indicated where to go. All that is used in pathfinding, which is regular GPS, and that's AI. So we need that. So what is game AI? So it is. How can we define this? And this I read. I actually found it, an Introduction to Game Development, an old book, 2009, edited by Steve Raven. This says game AI is anything that contributes to the perceived intelligence of an entity, regardless of what's under the hood. And it was funny because I tried to remember. So what is it? I had this, and then I put it on the internet, and everybody puts it out. And the interesting thing is that sometimes they don't even attribute it to anybody it is coming from. But I believe it's coming from Steve Raven. So given this definition, we wanted to create, in this case me, wanted to create an artificial opponent for the Alchemist Ascendance game. All right. So I'm going to switch temporarily. I don't think I can switch away from this. I'm going to just real quick. I don't even think that anybody knows how the game looks or plays. So I'm just gonna real quick show it in here, and I'm showing it on the wrong. We'll do free aspect. So as you can see, I do this in Unity. All right. So very, very quickly, I'm going to show you there are two modes, strategy and risk. I'm just going to talk about the strategy. It happens that the AI actually works in risk as well. And these are, oh, God. You see, this is what I don't like about this. Thank you for pointing that out. Let me see if I need to change my settings. Hold on. All right. Sorry about that. Showing now. Okay, good. So that's how it looks. That's the main menu. We have 3 to 7 rounds. As I say, the strategy is one that we actually see the pieces all in front of you. It says full knowledge. Risk is one that you really don't know what you're going to get, and then you need to place it. But let me just run it here without anything. So basically, you have player 1 on the bottom, player 2 on the top. Each one of them has what is called a triple. As you can see, there are 8 triples. They're all possible combinations of 2 colors or 2 metals. In this case, gold and silver. So you have, you see that, and it has the triple looks a lot like, and I don't know whether I can mention that mouse without actually ringing bells down in Florida, right? But it looks like that. But it's, for instance, this is silver, gold, and you can see it's around like this, so it's in a circle. So there are 8 possible ways to combine this. So we have 8 of those. Now, whenever you do a round, you're given 4 of those, and the opponent is given the other 4. And the idea of here is that I will then make the moves so that I form my triples and not the opponent's triples. So I'm going to show that in a moment and say, for instance, I think my best bet is moving this one. So I have it in here. So there are 8 empty positions. And now the opponent, which is this one here, probably the best will be, exactly the opposite in this case. So I'm going to try to do this in here. All right. So when I did this move, so there are 2 silver together, because I have 2 silver here, 2 silver here, and I have 2 silvers on this side as well. So this one actually, I know that the way that we go is I'm probably going to play it here. Now this one, the opponent in this case, doesn't have any silvers together. So my move in that case is so that I know that my next move is regardless. So of course, this one can also counter the same way, having 2 in there. And now I can do this. And now that gives me 2 points. I have these 3, so I combine them together. Now, another thing that I have here is that I can move this so that sometimes for people, whenever people were playing, they were saying, it makes it so difficult because if it is upside down, I don't see, for instance, this 3 over here, I don't know if it looks like anything that I have down here. Excuse me. So I made it so that you can just move it. So you can, if you don't see how that looks, if it's closer to your position, so you can just move it and then see it. So now, of course, the idea will be that I'm going to put this the gold on here, which will form this one here. The problem is, no, actually it will give me two because it also forms this one here, which is this one. It's gold and silver. But then you have gold, silver, silver, which is actually this one here. So in this case, my move is going to provide, in this case, if I'm player two, is going to provide two on one side. And then, so it has two of it here, but I actually got one on this side. So on this one, I'm just going to do the same thing, so real quick. And this is, whenever it gets all silver and all gold, and for each one of those, this is sometimes the way that it may go. So it's something like this. In this case, you're tied. So you go to the next round, etc. So I wanted to show you that so that you see what is it that we are trying to do with this. So as a human, you would try to find the patterns and see where is it that you're going to find, the better moves, so that you'll be creating your own. We'll be creating your own combinations of whatever you have, and you're given different combinations for every round. So if I do this again, now I have different combinations. Now I have to do it again. So this is not something that I can just figure it out for this one. Every time that I do a round, I have different combinations, so I need to work this different. As you can see, for instance, here, because I have all gold, the majority are gold, my move in general might be gold as a strategy to start with. So one of the problems, that you have with this strategy, even though you don't really have a lot of moves. At the beginning, you have, basically everywhere, except that you need to make a decision whether you move gold or silver. But as it continues, then you're restricted to the point where at the end, the last player only has one place. You need to still make a decision of whether you play gold or silver. So whenever we had something like this, this is the strategy. This is all you see. You see everything on it. If we were to put it on risk, then you are given either the gold or the silver. So you're not always given both of them. So I call it risk because now it's like throwing dice. I really don't know what I'm going to get. So your strategy might change a little bit. But the AI actually works for both of them. All right. So let me move back to this. All right. So that's, I know that maybe it was not enough for the whole thing, but let's take a look at the approaches to a strategy game. Some of the things that we can do with this is, normally would require strategy, require analysis of both, the battlefield, and analyze the battlefield, and then have a long-term planning and strategy to see what is it that I'm going to do. Okay, I have my pieces placed in some some places in the battlefield, basically. And what do I do? What is my next move? What do I move so that I'll improve the state of the game on my favor? So chess and checkers, are that kind of game. Wherever you have the moves, and then whenever we're playing, the opponent requires to consider not only opponent's pieces, but your positions and etc. But you also your own positions, and then this is what we call the battlefield analysis. So when you look at the checkers or chess, you take a look at everything. I have two nephews, older nephews. I told them how to play chess when they were 7. Whenever they reached 7, I taught them how to play chess. They eventually became masters. They would beat me in no time. But they really got interested in that. The interesting thing was that both of them played different. One is actually has a static analysis of the battlefield, and the other one has more of a dynamic analysis of the battlefield. So checkers and chess, battlefield analysis. If you ever play checkers or chess, that's what you do. That's what you're doing. And the thing with this is that, how do you create an AI that does that? How do you evaluate positions and movement, etc.? So the battlefield analysis by itself is a static consideration of the state of the game. You know, we need to sort of plan and take a look at how do I change the game to my favor. How, in the case of Ascendance, how can I then make a move so that I will be better off after that move? That's what mechanic. So one of those ways that, and I actually considered this, is decision trees. Decision trees normally are used. For instance, you're in a certain position, and then you have different choices. So, what happens if I go this way? What happens if I go this other way? What happens if I go left? If I go to the right, etc. And then after you do that, what happens if I do this? How happens if I do that? So that becomes a decision tree. If you play things such as, let me see, what is it that actually, the one that I've been playing lately is Detroit. If anybody has played Detroit, after you do, or even in the middle of one of the levels, you can go and take a look at the decision tree of the things that you've done. Or if somebody else played Until Dawn, I believe, use all the decision tree. The people, the streamers that actually, I remember the one that actually found out how to save everybody in the game. He actually explored all that until he found out what was the particular path through the decision tree that will actually get you there. And those are decision trees. This is what we use to do these things. So for every state of the game, whatever position you are, they will have a number of moves so that we can choose, when you make a decision. And we at that point may actually know which is the best move. If you're knowledge in checkers, there is a particular move that you start with. I think it's called the Old Faithful. There's a particular move, and then it's similar as in chess that you even call certain openings and defenses, etc. So whenever we do something like this, you need to create this decision tree. If you ever curious, you can create a decision tree of tic-tac-toe. I don't know if you ever, I know you probably have not done it, but you could do something like that. And it might be long, the decision tree. And then that's when you realize, oh, once I know how to play this, I know exactly what I have to do. And all you have to do is to start this way, et cetera, et cetera. And then you know that the best you can do, if both opponents exactly know how to do, is to tie. So in this case, you have, something that you can explore. What happens with checkers or even worse with chess is that as you develop this and you try to see a path for planning, which one would I do? Which way would I move? What pieces should I move? Sometimes if you want to include long-term planning, doesn't mean that the first move that you make, has to be the best. It might not be the best at that moment, but it might actually pay off down the road. But for that, you had to do all the planning. But for all that, you had to then really explore the decision tree. And it becomes sometimes memory intensive. And it requires a lot of memory and time for processing. And sometimes, you do all that, you make that decision, and then the opponent makes a move that you were not considering at that time, and then now you have to do it all over again. So this is one of the issues that I had with decision trees. So I was thinking about doing that, and then I thought, well, how large are they? How, because the game that I have there is mobile. I don't want to consume a lot of memory in that. So how much can they grow? Do they grow rapidly or what? So for instance, in checkers, we start with 7 different moves. Checkers are 7 different moves that you can do. To start. That's like rapidly counted. So for every one that you make, there is also another set of different moves that the opponents can make. And as you can do that, if you do 2 or 3 or 4 deep, now you have really not just a tree, it's a forest. You have all kinds of combinations with that. So it becomes really, really difficult to manage. And sometimes a lot of that you just have to throw it away because it's not useful, right? So when I considered this, I said, well, the possibilities with this, maybe I could do a decision tree because, we start with 8 and actually it starts constricting. It's not like with chess that's actually starts opening up, to all kinds of possibilities. So the problem with the battlefield in Alchemist Ascendant is that you saw it's a circle. Now, if you're in something like on computer science, you would say, yeah, that's just a circular list. But the problem is that when you consider that, when you put a piece in that circle, even though you have, all that is empty, and then you put one piece, it happens that if you rotate it anywhere, they actually is just the same move. It doesn't change. It's the same thing as if you're in mathematics, which I know at least one person around here should be in mathematics, is the rotations. How do you actually do rotations? And how do you show rotations? With permutations and rotations, etc. You normally find what is called the canonical form of the rotation, so that you always refer to that one. So that if you have a rotation for 3, 4, 5, and then you do it exactly at 3, 4, 5, it happens that it's the same rotation as 4, 5, 3 or 5, 3, 4. It's the same, but then you define the canonical form for that is 3, 4, 5. So I had to deal with that in this case because I had that circle. I will put a piece in there and I move it where it's exactly the same move. So that's okay. And then you could say, and it's in fact, I have a circular queue in there. I mean, a circular list in there, which is maintaining that. The problem is, how do I catalog it? So I created a way of creating a canonical form of that. And then it became that it's actually a moving target because depending on whenever you put pieces, your canonical form changes and then it takes you in a different area. You had to jump into trees. And so it became a little bit more work that I wanted to do. So what I did in this case, if I have, for instance, 16 possible start 2 pieces, 8 positions, there's actually just 2 colors times the empty positions, but in reality at the end is this position are all of those 2 moves. As I move roll or I move the other one. Why? Because it's rotationally equivalent. Yeah, it doesn't matter what they are. So I had to then, if I wanted to go with decision tree, then deal with this and have it that way. So I decided to do not do it that way, and what I didn't want it to do, as I said, is depending on what I make, I will sometimes jump in my decision tree because of the canonical form. Maybe if I have looked a little bit harder and find a more stable canonical form, I would have actually gone it that way. But so I sort of said, I'm going to go this other way. Anyway, for every round, you have only 4 moves per player. So I said, I'm not going to use all that in there. So I put the rotational equivalent positions on the side, and I said, I'm going to do instead a 1 move. So I'm just going to analyze the field, and I'm going to base the best move at that point. So there is no planning forward.
Can I ask a quick
Yeah,
question?
sure.
I don't understand. When I do the math, the tree's not that big.
Oh no, it's not. It's not. It was not the size of the tree. It was just the trying to find a stable way of representing the rotations,
Okay,
the
but
canonical form.
so
Yes.
is it fair to say you weren't looking for a brute force answer that would be always correct?
Not at the time. No.
You didn't care about the brute force path.
No, I was not looking for. I was just looking for something simple that would provide some challenge to a player. That would be a little bit meaningful.
I I get it.
Yeah,
So you're not looking for just the best answer for the AI to perform, because this seems to be well within reason. Because it was like 16 times, right? It's not that big for it to know the perfect
no, it's not.
catalog.
Yeah, it's not. It's what I tell my students is I'm a lazy programmer. If I can write less lines of code, I go will take that route.
You didn't want a recursive perfect solution. You wanted actually something that might lose, right?
Oh yes, yes. Remember about. I say remember like if we actually have that as a knowledge, a body of knowledge, but we want our AI to be uh, has some flaw in there because if it is somehow perfect, we might never win. So there is a flaw in this.
Right. The reason I asked again, it didn't seem to be a hard problem to write the perfect. Again, I wouldn't even call it the brute force.
Right.
It's not that deep. It's 16, 15.
No, it is. Yeah, it's just 4 moves. It's just really.
I didn't quite get that part yet.
Yeah,
I got the opening 2, and then I thought you have 2 times 7, 14, then.
Right. Yeah, it's not deep, and it's actually
12, all the way down.
it constricts, right? But it constricts as you advance. If you actually unfold it all, there are actually 70 different trees.
Okay.
Yeah, there are 70 different trees. So it's not like we always start because our pieces change. When we start, so there are 70 different starting positions.
Oh, I didn't. So it's not just the gold, silver. It opens up to more than that.
Well, because of the triples that we have, you're handed different triples for every round. So that would actually present a different goal for every different one.
But to look at, you have the evaluation method.
Yes.
And you could go down, I thought you could go down every path by 2 times 14, 12, 10, 8, whatever. You could go down and just calculate. And then pick the best strategy from that. But again, that would be perfect. It would never lose unless it had to lose, right?
Right.
So, but I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, I understand, and that's why I actually put it in there. Yeah, there was a consideration for that, but I decided to just do it a simple one move analysis. Yeah.
Which is really cool, actually. I mean, I like that.
Yeah. So I could have gone that way, but I decided no. I'm just gonna do.
The reason I'm going to ask something is I thought you were implying that your unwieldiness caused you to make this.
Oh, no.
And I didn't see the unwieldiness because I saw that from brute force it seemed to be a fairly straightforward.
Right. Yeah.
I understand how that's not in your goal.
Yeah. No. That was, and it was not that. It was also finding the equivalent positions. Of the position that was probably part of the main reason, and I thought I think that might be enough. I want the AI to at least the move. It will have some meaning. It has what we call about something like that. I'm trying to call it some measure. Actually, I call it that in my program. Like a norm. You have a metric. And then by following that metric, and then you say you're trying to improve on that metric, a maximization of the metric. So it made it very simple from that point of view. All right, so if I do a one move, I don't have to be thinking about, I find in the equivalent positions or the equivalency of all these. I don't have to be rotating anything. I just do a simple analysis like that and elimination of this. The other problem with the circular, because it doesn't have beginning or end, when you think about representation, I mean, if you have an array, if you have other things, you normally have left to right, etc. But anything that is analyzed in circle, you need to consider that if it is actually rotationally equivalent, it makes it difficult because now you have to move, as I said before, everything to a canonical form so that then you can part from a known point. So eliminated all that, and I put all this thing as the journey of I wanted, an AI. I actually asked students, and I said, if you write me an AI for this game, I'll pay you. It's just consider it an internship. And then nobody wanted to take it on. So maybe next time I'll have some more luck with somebody. So I decided to do it on my own. So what I use is a very simple strategy, and also to illustrate that sometimes you don't really have to do a lot of work to actually have something decent. So the idea, the deal for this, I use scoring priority queues. So the approach is to try every possible move and give it a score. So I have, a given number of empty positions, and I try each one of the pieces one at a time. I score it given the pieces that I have, and then the score is based on how close. Whenever I move that, the board turns to my favor, and how much of those triples that are, sometimes we'll be missing things. How close are those to my pieces? And there's an analysis that can be done in there. So every possible move and its score is stored in a priority queue. Priority queue is a queue that actually orders the thing by a given priority. In this case, the score is the priority. In that way, so once all the moves are stored in there, all I have to say is give me the next in the queue, which is the one with the highest score for the move. And that one high score is the one that will actually give me or give the AI the greatest win, the greatest gain in what you do this. So if there is more than one move with the same score, you can actually have, two or three with the same score. What I just do is randomly choose. And that actually makes the AI sometimes thinking, oh, it made a different move. That's because it had the same score, but I randomly chose, a different one. That also allowed me to do, if you look at the game, I have challenge, which is this level, and practice. What practice does is that I don't take the first highest score, but the second. So it's not your best. It doesn't really do the best, but it allows you to practice, makes you feel good that you're winning. And that one's actually very simple to do, because what I did is I created what I call binned priority queues, which is not just a straight priority queues, but is a priority queues of lists. And each one of the lists is actually has all with the same score. That's why I call it bin. There are bins for each one of those. And then all I had to do is, if the bin has, more than one, then I just randomly choose one. And whenever I do practice, I just take the second bin, which is not as good, and then that's the one that plays. So let me show you. Sometimes I think about whether to show these kinds of things because let me see, preferences. I think I wanted to change this to oh, they changed this. Okay. Yeah. I don't know if it can be seen. Hopefully, yeah, you're not too far away, right? So, this is in Unity, and the way that this actually works is that whenever the AI needs to play, there is a point in here. So this is what I had all my talk ready, and then I said I need to go back and review my code. because I haven't looked at my code in a while, so that when I'm here, I don't do exactly what I'm doing, which is finding my code. I think in general, all right, so here, there you go, find best play. So it's a very simple, it's a very simple process. Here I take a list of all the triples. The triples are actually all the triples in the game, which is 8. So I take each one of the triples, and then I do it depending on the turn. You know, if the player 1 or player 2 is doing the turn, then I simply add the triple. So if it's player 1, I add the triple that actually corresponds to that. So this list at the end is going to have the triples that, say, if I'm player 1, it's going to have my triples. The triples that are below. Let me show you that. You see the triples below? If I'm playing that, no, these are the triples that that list is going to have. So when I do that, then I put it into a bin. I create a bin priority queue, and that's the one that handles all this. And then I create a move keeper. Move keeper actually has a move of the player, and it just has the information in there. It makes it actually very simple to handle down the road and say, okay, I have a move keeper that actually contains makes move in here, and then what this one will do is it takes let's see. Down here, let's say we're player 1. If the comes in here, it says create a new move keeper. Down here, now I don't even see my here. So it creates a move keeper, takes the piece, piece holder takes the piece, and then takes the measure. The measure is how good is this move, and what it's going to do is going to try each one of those. It's going to create a move for every one of those, and then this one will do. We'll go back to here. This is the one that actually makes the measure. Takes the list of triples, takes the piece, and then what it will do is will take each one of this. It actually has a it is in fact I call it scratch circle, because this is one that I actually try things and then I can discard, and I try things and can discard. And what this one will do is find the worthiness of this move. And it actually has 5 positions that you can see on the top. So when I put that move, how much is that worth? And that's what it will go down in here. And then it considers, for instance, if I make the move, will I give points to my opponent? If I give more points to my opponent, then I actually reduce that. And then you see this gain over here, -3. If I actually gain something, it is 3. Depending on how many ones I match in the triple. If it is empty, you're not gaining anything. But if you actually are matching in the triples, with each one of this, then you actually get more of this. So there's a little bit more intricacy in how to in fact handle this, and I have it commented out in here. So we see on the top it says we check for a complete triple. If it is if it is, we use a special test. Here, if there is a complete triple that is being formed, then I actually account for that. If that complete triple didn't give me anything, if the gain was 0, that means that triple is complete and it doesn't belong to me. It belongs to the opponent, -3. That's the penalty. If it's not a complete triple, then it will actually come in here, and then it takes a look at each one of these, and then it finds how much of gain do I have, how much of matching that particular move gives me in here. And then at the end, what it does, it returns the total. So for this one, I call it scratch circle, is because, as you can see the piece over here, I actually remove the piece because I just put it temporarily, measure the battlefield, and see how much do I gain for this, and then remove it, and then I do that for every single position that I have. Then each one of those, and this is the measure, this is the score, this is the old one, this is an old way that I had to do it. Then when I get all those, they're actually placed into the bin priority queue, and this one all it does, it sorts it with different queues, and then it brings it back, and let me see, is it here? I actually always make that move, and then I select, if this is AI, then I actually play that move. And the reason what I was saying before, where are you? MK. There you go. So I use this, and this is part of the things that sometimes will get you. If you let the AI play, you will never see the play, right? Because the moment that you move it, immediately the thing actually does all the analysis and plays. You never see the system actually move or make the move. So what I created is an artificial delay. It's like it's moving the piece, and it's all done with the AI play. So the AI play, all it takes is an MK or a move keeper, which is the one that I just found in there. One that I got from the bin priority queue. I said this is the best move. So I just call this one. If anybody knows about Unity, you realize that this is a one that you are actually calling in a different thread, right? You spawn a thread. So I spawn the thread, yield for about 1 second, and then I have to say the MK play, and then switch to player. And that actually delays so that I can see it, so it's about a second. Because if I don't put that in there, then you will never see, it feels very odd if you're playing with something like that. So when you do this, let me do the stop in here. I'm going to put it to play. So, you see, at least you have some sense that, oh yeah, somebody is moving. See, it waits, then it comes back to that. So all that is wrapped in that little thing. So all I have to do is find what is the best move, and then just delay it enough, and then play it. So this was player, it was playing against itself, and it's using the same AI. So if you work with wrist, let me just quickly show you that. You see, you only have one piece, and it's randomly selected. So sometimes I don't really like playing that way, because you end up losing because you didn't have a good set of plays. See, that's the tie, even on the risk. Okay, so so that's how how it actually at the end it plays. There are all kinds of things that sometimes I like to do, and I explained what I was saying before is that whenever you do something like the AI, you cannot sort of just show something and generalize unless you actually show exactly, okay, this is our battlefield. And I like to do something that is not like checkers. I mean, we could do checkers. For instance, I do this in classroom, in the class. So I can show checkers, and I can show how to move and to do all these things and how to implement the AI for that. Um, but if we move to another game, then you have to think about a completely different way. And you can have the generalized ways, like we were talking about binary trees, decision trees, etc. But the best is to actually show up with an example. And, something like this, you have to really get deep into that. And what I wanted to do, as I said, when I asked for some of my students to actually run an AI, was to actually take it as an opportunity to see how they will actually solve the problem. But nobody actually took up to the challenge of doing it, and I ended up doing it myself, and it works okay. As I said, it's a one move approach using priority queues and scoring, for each one of the moves. And it turned out to be actually simpler than I thought originally. So in conclusion, sometimes the simple solution is more powerful than you can imagine. And that's what happened to this. As I said, I was doing what I think it was Joe. Joe was mentioning something this morning in the talk. It's saying, don't think about it. Just do it. And then I was just trying to come up with the best way to do it, and I found out that way was actually a lot simpler. So once I hit that, it took me like a couple of days to actually write it and do it. And I know that Joe and I would talk about sometimes that we don't want to do something for the code, and we just keep it, and then later on we fix it and say, oh, geez, well, I've done this a lot, earlier would have been actually good. And that's sometimes what I think about something like this. So anyway, if I have any questions, I will be happy to respond. And I didn't think I was going to take this long, so apologize. Well, we started late, right? All right. No questions? All right. Thank you very much.
This is Andrew Greenberg, Executive Director of the Georgia Game Developers Association, here at SimFest 2017 at lovely Columbus State University. We've had a great day of discussions on game development. I'm here with one of our speakers right now to go into a little bit more depth about what you discussed earlier today. Hillary, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, my name is Hillary Fleener. I teach programming classes here at Columbus State University, and I'm also our outreach coordinator. So I do a lot of the outreach to the schools and to the military, trying to get computer science out to everyone.
So one of the big topics we in the game industry have to deal with is how do we create effective characters who reach out to a wide audience, characters who are believable and fun and enjoyable all at once. So can you tell us a little bit about your presentation today?
So I talked today about how female video game characters have kind of changed over time, and we're definitely going in a positive direction with female characters. You know, we kind of started out in the 80s, and Pac-Man got a bow, and it was Mrs. Pac-Man, which was cool. That was great. And then we kind of had some trouble in the 90s, where female characters tend to always be in bikinis or inappropriate clothing, and not given very well-developed storylines, interesting characters, interesting roles. And that is changing, luckily. Especially with games like Borderland, you have, we talked about some other games too. They're doing a much better job. But even in 2015, though, at E3, only 9% of the playable characters that the role was specifically for that character were female, whereas 32% of them were male. So we still have a long way to go in creating interesting, dynamic, complex female characters that female gamers can relate to. And female gamers are 40% of the gaming community.
And even more so online, which brings up the question of esports and competitive gaming. Because one area we certainly see female characters in some numbers, certainly not at a majority of the numbers yet, is in esports, League of Legends, Paladin, Smite, Brawlhalla. All of these tend to have strong female characters. Do you think that the idea of having competitive gaming, where you're trying to draw in a wide audience, not just of players, but of viewers, will help inspire more people to build interesting, fun female characters for their games?
I hope so. I mean, people create things for the market. They want to sell them. And in the 90s, we had kind of a cultural thing where a group of people decided that technology was for boys, and they marketed it for boys, and that's the market that they reached. And so gaming was really made up of mostly boys and men, and so that's what the games were created for. But I think now that that's changing a little bit, and more women are getting into it. In the 1990s, only 3% of game developers were women. Now it's 22%. We still have a ways to go, but that's much better. But I think the more we see female characters, the more that's going to change. And luckily, I think younger males have different ideas, and they're more excited about playing female characters themselves. And their attitude is changing a lot. And they did a study where they were asking about the female characters and what they thought about these sort of scantily clad characters, and a lot of the males were saying this is unnecessary. This is really actually just detracting from the story. I want to play a realistic character. I want to play her character, and she's this is ridiculous. So it's nice to see that attitudes are changing, and I think that the more attitudes change, the more we'll see the change in the game industry.
So there's been some discussion within the game industry that while the development community is still concentrated in the United States, we are seeing greater development outside of the United States, Asia, Europe, even Africa and the Middle East. There has been some comment made that those are kind of following the U.S. model, where initially you had very limited female representation, then it was designed primarily to attract a younger male demographic, and then changed into a more mature form that would attract a greater audience. I don't know how familiar with Korean or Chinese games, if you've seen...
I'm not, and most of the research has been really concentrated on the U.S. because we have a long history. So they started the studies with games from the 80s, and they have a big breadth of games to look at, but the foreign industry is a lot newer, so they really haven't done much. But I'll be really interested to see what develops and if they move quicker or kind of what comes from that.
So what are your hopes for what will come in the future for female characters in video games?
Well, my hope is actually for both female and male characters that we just get more diversity in characters, less stereotyping of both male characters and female characters, and just a lot more interesting, complex, good storylines, good characters that represent just a wider range of the population. And again, not just with female characters, but with male characters too. I talked to some young men who say that a lot of the male characters in video games, they don't really identify with them anymore.
Duke Nukem.
Yeah, so I would like to just see it expand for males and females, just a lot more breadth and depth in characters.
So last question, there's been a lot of discussion about how the rise of VR and MR and AR is going to affect this. As people feel themselves being actually a part of the game, are the characters going to have to be more reflective of the world in which they live? Do you see this impacting the development of characters in the future? I
do, and that's going to be a fascinating area to look at, because the more we do that, I think that, people are going to choose their avatars. There's going to be more options for building your avatar, and people are going to be choosing it. Are they going to choose it to reflect themselves, or are they going to want to have more of a fantasy type character? And I think it will be really interesting to see. There's a lot of science fiction books that kind of speculate that's the way, what people will choose to do. Would I want to have an avatar that looks like me, or do I want a unicorn? I don't know. I think that'll be a really interesting area to kind of see how that develops.
I think my daughter wants to be a little teapot in her next video game, but that's a side point. Well, thank you very much, Hillary. Appreciate the interview and appreciate your presentation.
Thank you.
Greetings, this is Andrew Greenberg, Executive Director at the Georgia Game Developers Association. We're here at SimFest 2017 at Columbus State University with two of our speakers, giving some extra content, some extra insights into their presentations. Hope you've checked them out already. But it's very interesting. With me are Bob Carter, our keynote speaker, Basru Kane, who spoke on art. Think it, do it, achieve it. And both of these fine gentlemen talk about actually accomplishing what you set out to do. So right now we're going to dig a little bit into inspiration. One of the interesting things that Mr. Kane brought up is that he likes to listen to music to inspire the art. So we're going to turn it over to him, first of all, to find out exactly what kind of music inspires what kind of art.
Hello, like I said, my name is Basru Kane, and when I listen to music, it really helps me to think about what kind of mood do I need to set towards different artwork that I'm doing. So if I want to listen to something like something jazzy, like if I want to listen to some jazz, when I draw, I feel free. And sometimes my work come out more abstract. And I say, okay, so music made me do this. My mind didn't really get me there. It was the music that guided my hand for it to do that. And okay, when I want to draw something like something hardcore, I would listen to like Linkin Park, for example. I really like that band. When I listen to them, they kind of really get me in the mood to draw something like kind of more serious or dark or something like that. And then when I want to draw something kind of like for kids or family oriented, I draw something like little, like kind of like fairies or unicorns, something that, that will please like the kids and everything. And I
like unicorns.
Yeah.
I love unicorns.
Everybody loves magical creatures. Everybody loves magical creatures. So yeah, so I kind of listen. Well, it's the artist, his name is Adam Young. You might have heard of Owl City.
Okay,
you probably did, yeah. And he makes some good music.
Absolutely.
It actually set the it set the mood for like all kind of stuff to like start swirling in your head, and it's a great experience. Really, it is.
I'm not going to ask you what Weird Al Yankovic inspires you to draw. But Bob, Mr. Carter,
yes.
To take the other side of it, you are a voice actor. Does art inspire you? Do you require a picture Balrog before you get that 10-punch combo going right?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Well, when it comes to creating a character, I look at the image, and that inspires the nonverbals, which is where all of my characters first and foremost begin. Before I ever say a word as that character, I have to look at the image and figure out, how does this character hold themselves? How does this character breathe? How does this character express frustration? Or how does this character express satisfaction.
I feel the unicorns.
Yes. Pretty flowers and unicorns. So absolutely, the picture is worth more than 1,000 words, in fact.
Well, for voice actors, thank goodness 1,000 words pay more than one picture. But let's talk a little bit more about how you get creativity and how you get inspired. So you're in the middle of a long project. You're working on a graphic novel right now. That can burn you out in no time. How do you stay inspired on a graphic novel?
Well, when I stay, how do I stay inspired on a graphic novel? Well, first of all, I just have to keep the story fresh in my head. Every time I think about it before I go to sleep. When I wake up in the morning, I'm thinking about how can I improve the story that might interest, the public or the people that I want to see. So what I do is I draw. I try to keep it fresh in my head. I draw it over, draw it again,
No burnout there.
Yeah, there's no burnout. But then when I start burning out, that's when I have to go and I have to just stick to myself, stay to myself, think for a little while. Then once again, idea pops in my head and I have to go right back to it. And that's called consistency. That's what I like.
All right, Bob. For you, third day of a VO session, you're reading the same line, 50th, 100th time. How do you keep it fresh?
Well, actually, if I'm in the third day of the VO session, I've already progressed through the script because we typically do 3 takes in any given one line, and then we move forward. So that way I don't have to worry about going back to do retakes. Keeping it fresh, however, well, first and foremost, you got to take care of the voice, right? So a lot of warm tea, a lot of honey, and then also music. We're talking about a lot of high energy, a lot of EDM. Actually, it depends on the character. Honestly, it depends on the character because music sets the mood, right? Absolutely. Motion creates emotion, but the rhythm of that music is absolutely what sets the mood, just like it does for visuals,
Exactly.
right? You've got to feed your soul and your spirit, and to energize your spirit, we always draw upon music. Whether that's music from when we were kids, whether it's music from when we were in high school or are in high school now, whatever that music is that inspires us, that makes us move, that makes us feel good, that's absolutely what feeds us. And in this case, it feeds our spirit.
Exactly.
And that's how you reset your brain, right? It's all about that and breathing. That quick mental, emotional reset.
All right, so there you have it. Good music, dancing, Long Island iced teas, and honeyed whiskey. Thank you, Bob Carter. All right.
thank Columbus State University and the GGDA for having us out today for having me to allow you to talk about the Battle for Ire, which is one of my company's very first massive virtual reality projects in collaboration with Busch Gardens Williamsburg. So there's two parts of this. The first part is talking about the ride and the design itself, and the second part of this is also to kind of teach you guys a skill. So the skill that I'm going to convey here is when somebody hands you a full script and said, "Make this a thing." What's the next step, right? All right, so let's talk about the ride for just a second here. As far as the content, I'll just play the basic commercial for it. Let's see here. Okay, dude. That's like, not playing nice with me. It wasn't playing there.
There are two worlds in Ireland, the one you know and the other world.
The other world needs a warrior.
It is your love of this land that has brought you here today to help me protect the heart of Ire and to save the magic of Ireland.
The last remaining fairy guardian needs your help.
We've got to stop Baylor.
Go on an epic journey to save the magic of Ireland.
You are our last chance.
Join in the Battle for Ire, the new action VR ride, only at Busch Gardens Williamsburg.
Okay, so that's the 30-second version of it. So what it is actually in their Ireland land. Busch Gardens is kind of themed out by various countries, I guess. You've got France, Ireland, Germany, all that kind of stuff. So in the Ireland area, they have this castle here. And inside this castle is this massive motion simulator, which I'll show you some footage of that a little bit later. And we're talking something that's probably 20 feet or so off the ground that can move all of these seats at the same time. Now, this was formerly a different type of ride. They had Europe in the Air and Corkscrew Hill, which were kind of some of their legacy rides in this facility here. And most of those use this massive screen to show the guests that kind of experience. They wanted up to ante. They wanted it to be fully immersive. So they contacted Falcons Creative Group, and we had this huge discussion of how to do this in virtual reality. Ultimately, what happened is every one of these seats has an HTC Vive headset and a brand new way of dealing with loading a bunch of people in, getting them all in VR, and getting them off the ride quickly. So traditionally, it was like everybody'd sit down, there'd be some operator did pull all the straps and everything. How you doing? That little conversation. We came up with a system that essentially, before they get onto the ride, they put on this little helmet-like mask thing. And then when they sit down on the ride, they literally just grab the headset and it snaps on with a magnet. They can do the presentation, pop that thing off, set it down, walk off, next guest. And then we can wash the headsets later. So that solves the hygiene problem in mass virtual reality. So that's a little bit on the tech side. The story itself is based in Irish mythology. So we have our guardian fairy, Addie, and her companion, which is a dragon named Maleficent. And essentially, they are protecting this thing called the Heart of Ire, which is like all the magic of Ireland in one gem. And this thing is under threat by Baylor, who decides that he wants to take it to wreak havoc on the other world, which is kind of the alternate version of Ireland. So here's our design parameters here. Tell a compelling VR story in under 5 minutes, because you remember this is a theme park ride. You got to get a lot of people on and off quickly. Make it about Irish mythology. Make it for guests, for all ages to enjoy something that they get and understand. And of course, fly on a dragon. And there was also that last minute request, you got to work in Leprechaun somehow. Get to that later. All right. So when you are a studio that is handed this task, like we want all these things, this is kind of the hit list of at least how we had to approach making Battle for Ire. Now, when you kind of think of the task of somebody says, hey, I want you to make a ride or a video game or a movie, you're like really amped up at first. You're like, this is great. And then you actually start making, you're like, how am I going to make this, right? And just as I say, like, they don't shoot a Harry Potter film with, like, everybody just one day shows up on the sound set and then they're like, let's make a movie. You know, it's like there's a lot of planning going on. So the part I'm going to talk about here is right after the script, the foundation for how you take something from concept to reality. So the script obviously is a very important thing, kind of working backwards a little bit. You have your brainstorming sessions with your team, like, what is it that we want to make? What is it we want to convey? And of course, in this case, you know, we pulled in all of like Irish lore and mythology and you know, just Celtic characters and that kind of stuff. We have some really brilliant artists at our studio that came up with some really amazing drawings that were kind of inspiration of like, maybe this is how we could make these characters work. We had a script guy that came up with a great script and story that was compelling in a short amount of time. But as I started this conversation, what happens when that script is set on your desk? Make this. Okay. So next thing to talk about is a rip-o-matic. Now, this is kind of an unusual thing. And how many in here have actually heard of what a rip-o-matic is? Anybody? So the reason you haven't is because no studio will publish one. It is essentially like if you go into an architecture firm, for instance, and they're building a building, you'll see this wall of inspiration, right? There'll be photographs of everything from other buildings to abstract things like birds and other things that are being shaped and designed for. A rip is that for moving pictures. So this is where your, I guess, geekdom pays off, right? It's when somebody says, here's all these ideas in a script. What would you think of if we expressed these ideas, right? And you can kind of go back in your mind of every video game you've ever played, every movie you've ever watched, every television show you've ever watched, anything that would relate to that, and you say, it would be kind of like this, right? And what we would do is we go out and we find all that material, you know, just movies, video games, all that stuff, and we put it together in this like really mishmash collage to set up the pacing and the feel. So when you're trying to express to people, it would be kind of like this. You have a visual representation of what this is. And so I'm going to give you a little demo of what this is. And the reason why we don't ever share them is it's kind of like sand art, right? There's so much intellectual property that goes into all the materials that you use to build a rip-o-matic, you would never be able to show it to anybody because of the, you know, liabilities and stuff. So it's kind of like created and destroyed. So when I say, and this is the audience participation part. So when I say, okay, you know, our first scene, this fairy warrior makes her way through a series of secret passageways and traps. Okay, just don't forget, just set aside the fairy warrior thing. Name me a game, a movie, a scene that somebody had to walk through a series of traps. Labyrinth, right? Anybody else? Absolutely. Okay, so if you were trying to express what that is to a producer or a creative group, you would go find that clip of the perfect thing and cut it together. And maybe you set it to music to kind of get your pacing. But now when you play it to somebody, they're like, oh, right, a trap. You know, that exact thing, labyrinth, whatever. So this one, a hidden chamber is with a dragon watching over a powerful, right? Again, Hobbit. Right, Hobbit, any of those, yeah. So then you have like the winged enemy minions steal the treasure, and the dragon attacks everything in the room. Again, any video game, movie, anything. Leroy Jenkins, right? So you might actually put in a clip of that. Like, this is the chaos that we want to see unfold, right? And the nice part is, like I said, you're setting this stuff up to music, you cut it all together, and like I said, visually it's kind of a train wreck to watch, but it conveys the message. And that's the most important part, is to convey the message. And people are like, I love the way that flight scene unfolds. I like the way that, you know, they did the fireball effects and all that stuff. And this is at the time, as artists, that you can dissect what made that successful. Why did you believe that scene? Why were you pulled into that moment in the scene? And also, why is it that you remember that scene how many ever years after you've seen this movie? Why was that the thing that popped into your head? being able to dissect that, being able to watch that, being able to show that to the rest of your group gives birth to the next important thing, which is the storyboard, right? So, like I said, the Ripmatic is kind of like the hidden thing in production, and it's used in everything. I mean, I even know Major Motion Pictures will put together a score on other scores of other films just to get the feel. This is what you call, how do you build the feel of the story that you're about to tell? So I'm actually going to jump back to this one a little bit. So we're going to start in what's an animatic. And the animatic is essentially the artist's interpretation of what they felt in the Rip-O-Matic. But now you're pulling in your characters, your environment, your story. But you're trying to put it into the context of the things that you found inspiring by that Rip-O-Matic, right? By the way, Rip-O-Matic is not something you just make and you're like, okay, we're good. Any idea how many versions of the Rip-O-Matic we made for Battle of Ire? 67, right? So it takes a while, but the nice part is, this is part of the fail fast, fail cheap thing. This is an editor and a bunch of people in a room coming up with some stuff. We throw it all into a mix. You know, we produce a piece that's the duration of the project that we want, but it's this mishmash collage. I'm not feeling this. This part takes too long. That's not coming off the way I thought. Maybe you need a different reference for that. Maybe you need a different part of the story, or put this in a different part of the story or whatever. That is your time to make those big changes before you hand it off to your animation and the CG team, and it gets really, really expensive to make a decision. So this is the next stage in that. And animatic is essentially a moving storyboard, right? So when you create the animatic, you are taking your script and your characters. You might even do temporary voiceover tracks or whatever, and you're creating cel-shaded animations that play every so often. So I'm going to actually play this for you to kind of like, or at least a scene, to show you what that's like.
Woo! There it is, the Heart of Ire. Come quick! Wait, what's that? Oh no, the Snua found it! Leave them alone! No! Uh-oh, he doesn't know you! Take cover! Olifeist, it's all right. They're friends. They're here to help us. Let's go! The Snua are getting away!
So the things that we're doing there is conveying, number one, what is the camera paying attention to? What is your composition? Where are your characters in relation to your camera? And just the general motion. Like, what should that scene feel like in kind of its context? The nice part about this, again, with the fail fast, fail cheap thing, is you build out the entire story this way. You start to see things and hear things even in the commentary that this is taking too long, or the cadence doesn't feel right, or you're breaking the immersion, or some other problems that you're having. You can change this over and over and over again. It's going to cost you very little because you're talking about the time of one editor, one storyboard artist. And just like the Rip-O-Matic, it was. Now we're just adding one more person to the mix. And you can refine your story, consolidate it, and make it like to the point where with audio, super easy to prototype with. You can create, lots of different versions of it. You can create this well-executed animatic. You're like, that is the film we want to produce, right? And from there, you can export your still shots or whatever for reference. Then now your animation and compositing team can build on. Any idea how many animatic versions that we did for Battle of Ire? You're very close, 106 variations of the animatic for Battle of Ire. But the nice part is we were able to have those discussions about massive changes. And we even did a couple like really major revisions with the client. They were like, we're feeling this. Great, no problem. You can you're as agile as can be in this state of production. You can do whatever you want. It's not going to cost you that much money. So now the question is like, how do you do this for VR, right? So it's kind of a different beast than the fact that, you have a 360-degree experience and you want people to focus in on that specific spot in that whole world, we found that the best way to do that is give people a focal point. And one of the big reasons that we put the fairy in there that like kind of went from spot to spot, that was the focal point. That was your crosshairs to say, this is where you need to look in the VR world. So she's the one talking to you. She's the one that's kind of following you. The camera is locked to the fairy at all times. So as she moves, you're able to kind of see the world still from the third person perspective, but you always have that thing to, you know, this is where I need to be paying attention to. And anytime she moved her head to look at something, that's where you moved your head to look at something. So you're building from the center out when creating a VR story. And that's kind of cool because then you can kind of put in all the details of the environment and whatnot. The camera stays smooth, which is really, really important. Mostly, especially when you're going, okay, I'm taking this and I'm putting it on a big platform that's going to move with people on it. You don't want people getting sick, especially mass groups of people, right? So there's a couple other things there. Hard cuts, of course, when you're talking about the entire environment's going to change brightness and depth and all that stuff. Hard cuts, really brutal for the end users, so try to ease that in, dissolves, transitions. We actually did this with portals. So as we went through different scenes, they would go through a portal. The portal would kind of like buffer your vision as you transferred from light scenes to dark scenes. I already talked about the focal point thing and the avatar thing. I don't even think I need to like talk about that. Spinning VR, that's bad and good. Things shouldn't always be in motion, and you'll see that most rides, regardless of what theme park ride you're in, will have that stopping point. And there's a couple reasons for that. Like in audio, we always said you couldn't have a big sound without a small sound that precedes it. Like if everything's always like maximum intensity, it's just that, right? So in your stopping moments, you can actually, big, exciting, you're moving around, you're seeing, amazing things, you stop, you kind of settle the audience, then you can move them into the more, the next set of those things. They don't have to be twice as extreme or anything like that. They're ready for that motion again. It gives them a pause. Avoid tight spaces for long durations of time. I found that just the general VR experience, people like to look around, and that was kind of the cool part about this. You're on the back of a dragon, you're flying through this mystical world. You want to be able to look around and see all these things and feel like you're in that place, right? So I talked about our animatic. How close did it actually come to the final clip?
There it is, the heart of Ire. Looks like we beat him. Wait, what's that? Oh no, the Sluagh! Those nasty little creatures! Back off, monsters! No! All of them! Take cover! They're friends. They're here to help us. They're gonna need a lift, Ollie. Look, the Sluagh have made a portal. Let's go.
So there, again, it's executed everything that I just said in VR. You have your focal point, you have your transition. The other thing that, of course, I can't really convey in this room is the sense of sound. So, like when the Sluagh are flying around in the theater, of course, we have the beautiful like pans and the multi-channel speakers and stuff like that. Sound is really underestimated in these kind of things, and helping people know where to look or feel like they need to look. So the nice part about this whole process is that now you are ready to turn it over to a team of people to make, right? And this is your animators who are building all things in Maya in this particular case, and your compositors and your lighting. That is a major endeavor, and it's a very expensive endeavor. So your fundamentals are so critical. Like if you feel great about your animatic and your storyboards, likely you're going to have a successful end product. If you kind of go in like, we'll kind of course correct once we're with the bigger team, you're gonna go broke. It's like very, very critical that you nail down the basics, and that way it becomes less like we're guessing on how to make it pretty, but more like paint by number, where each discipline can add the greatest. They get to add all the cool details and lights and everything like that, but your story is so nailed down, and you feel confident, and more importantly, in this case, your client feels very confident about it. Any questions at this point? Okay, moving on. All right, so this part I'm actually going to let some of my peers talk about the process from taking it from the animatic to the final film.
It all starts with an idea. And then from idea, eventually it goes to concept. We try a bunch of different iterations of what we think it could look like, and people will shoot down ideas. Eventually something comes about, and then we build on that idea.
You're telling a very complex story in a very short amount of time with a lot of moving parts. So we actually start with what do we want people to feel, and then we work our way through the story from there.
So we go through this methodology of creating storyboards from a script. We go to storyboards and start developing the characters and personalities. That then progresses to modeling. And then we start to utilize voice samples for tracks to get the personality out of the characters. We hire real voice talent to actually play the role. We animate to the voice itself. We actually start to develop the lighting and textures and environments, and ultimately bake all that in the render with the motion profile in place, and that becomes our attraction ride.
Look, the Slua have made a portal. Let's go! Come on, Ollie. Faster, faster! Hurry on!
It was insane. I've never done anything at all like it.
It's so immersive. You're able to look around. You're not just looking at something directly in front of you.
Special effects, the wind made you feel like you were actually flying.
Dragon is going, you feel like you're going with it and moving.
You feel like you're floating, like you're in another world.
You gotta ride this ride. I can't wait to take my little sister on it.
We're gonna tell our friends they definitely need to ride it.
So after this thing went live, of course, we were there opening day and talking to some of the guests, and we're all like interested. What did you think of the media? What did you think of the motion? We did have fans and stuff that we tied into the motion profile. The motion profile for the base is largely based on the camera movement. So in the scene, the camera dips down, the whole ride dips down. We had to fine tune that, but we were asking people, those intricate questions. Was like, did you feel the motion was right, whatever. What was hilarious is what came back, and that was that most of those people had never even experienced virtual reality before, right? Or they hadn't experienced it at that level, because you got to understand, a lot of theme park rides, they're literally like the cell phone, version of it. Now you're looking at a 5, like, wow. and a lot of them just were not used to that level of immersion. So it was kind of funny that was like their first experience in VR, and it kind of like it opens up the masses to the potential of it, because I think a lot of people, and one of the big issues of VR is that it's hard to demonstrate it for people, especially in a 2D or a YouTube video or something like that. It's like talking about swimming to somebody without jumping in a pool, So now you kind of expose a larger group of people to see how this feels and looks and whatnot. So a little bit more about the ride. Of course, we have a pre-story in the beginning. That there's like a queue system. We don't really like people waiting in lines a long time. So there's, sure, a little bit of line to get into the queue system. But inside that, we have a pre-story, which kind of starts out, kind of looks like a Diablo-esque type black and white book come to life kind of thing. It tells like the backstory of, all the scenario that you're about to become part of. And then you go into this room here, which is the, safety, how to deal with your equipment and enjoy the experience, which we did very comically with leprechauns that are fumbling things. So kind of made it fun and tied in the leprechauns, because we were like, how do you work like that? This is a picture of the actual motion base for the Battle for Ire, like if you're underneath. So this whole thing can tilt and move, and it's pretty quick, and certainly some really crazy angles. And this is the final array of seating for all the guests. And they literally just, sit down and snap on the headset. We even had some interactivity there where they can look around and it, does like eyeball selecting of elements, and you can kind of, start some interactivity. Of course, we're looking more into that in the future for a fully interactive and immersive experience in 3D. So that is the basics of it. We'll open the floor up for questions at this point.
So you talked about the polling the audience afterwards, but I'm sure you watched them while they're going through the physical reactions they're having. What are the physical reactions you want them to have?
Sure. We certainly want them to be thrilled, but not freaked out necessarily. It's not that kind of ride. It's not the roller coaster kind of thing. But we also want them to feel like the ride itself and the media are not two separate things, right? That it feels natural and it feels like it's part of the story. Because a lot of times what happens in these presentations is that people do it just because they can, right? It's just because we have the technology to make it, that kind of thing. We'll build it for this experience, custom tailor it, so every single thing feels together. Like, why is there a motion platform? Well, you're on a dragon. Now it makes sense. You have the, that connection for the guest that says, yeah, that's what it'd feel like to fly on a dragon. No one knows what it's like to fly on a dragon. But you got to have that idea, right? So.
I wasn't here for the whole time. I had to step out, but
sure.
So this may have been in the talk. Were there any 4D or 5D elements? I guess like blowing smoke, wind, anything.
Yes, of course. Everybody's in headsets, so they wouldn't notice much in the theater. But we do have fans, and so we'll do tricks like they'll have a thing where it feels like you're flying faster, right? Well, the back end of the motion simulator tilts up, and you start to lean down, and the fans kick on full speed. Well, your perception in virtual reality isn't that is happening. It is all of a sudden the dragon is kind of like, arced out its wings, and now you're doing the big dive. And it's crazy because visually you can show something that is like significant, 30, 40 feet in distance, but you're not really moving people more than a few feet. But because all those senses are combined, your body feels like, wow, this is this really exciting thing. But that's the fine-tuning part, because obviously too much of that and you can get people either nervous or sick or what, so.
But you do have anything in addition to the fans, like even directed stuff or water or something like that?
Nothing, so not in this particular one.
99% all VR.
Yes, cool. Yeah. And sound, obviously. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so I'm the virtual reality girl, and so
no problem.
The mass adoption for virtual reality is at a slower rate than what we expected.
Right.
And so so with rides like this, and do you think that the riders actually realize that it is available for them to take home to them? Do you think that? And also another thing is, after you're done with the development, right? Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure that it stopped. Like you probably don't go through and do the training for the ride attendants and stuff like that. But one of the things that with the especially with the SeaWorld experience, mm-hmm. I found out that the attendees was actually going and telling the riders that to not use the virtual reality, that it would make them sick. And so how do you think that we get over that part of it, and to make more awareness that this technology is available for consumer use?
Okay, so there's kind of two thoughts of this. The first thing is we actually did go and train the staff and sit with them through the whole debug process, along with the people that help kind of tune up the entire system to run really efficiently. That's really important, because obviously just setting up your headset wrong can give you a bad experience, right? Like if your focal points, like the headset's a little too high, it looks blurry, that kind of stuff. Training them, and when people are saying these things, they probably mean these things, and kind of getting that knowledge base built for them. For the guests, they certainly start to go, oh, that's a Vive, or something like that. They recognize what that is, and now they go, well, that makes sense, because you're never going to get that demo at a Best Buy, right? And for the industry as a whole, and I've seen a lot of, especially lately, the kind of ripcord the industry has of like, VR's failing. You know,
It's driving me crazy.
it's not going to go well. And the conversation needs to be like, you're just talking about the headsets.
Right,
Really, you're
exactly.
just talking about the headsets. There is just this explosion of stuff that we are learning about augmentation, mixed reality, and everything that actually goes beyond headsets.
Yes.
And headsets were like the very first step into this kind of thing.
Absolutely.
And we're already starting to see the next evolutions of that. Our company has actually done a couple of these things where we have these massive rooms with tons of projectors that kind of give you that holodeck-ish kind of feel where it feels like you're transported to a different place. And we're experimenting with different things. We have one in Washington, D.C. that's kind of like a virtual tourism kind of thing and whatnot. But this, it starts to expand beyond just headsets. And that's really the most important thing. And that's something that's just not being communicated to the media that, like, you know, you're just watching stage one, man. I mean, and not to mention the headsets themselves are doing extraordinary things. HTC with their latest Vive Pro doesn't even have cables attached to it. Like, that's a big difference in itself. Your freedom of the whole idea of room sense, when that became a thing, you know, I don't think the media really, or the press, I should say, grasped onto that. Not only can you see this thing in 3D and whatnot, you can walk around this thing.
Yes,
And that's incredible. And what that's going to lead to, which is like, you know, light field technology and whatnot that we're starting to see experiments of. Google had recently published their light field tests where you're sitting on the, you know, Space Shuttle Discovery and you're able to, like, look at a still photograph and move and see behind the seats of the shuttle and the controls and everything. It's like, it's nearly magic. And that's one of those things that I think needs to be conveyed to the press, is that it's a...
I'm trying really hard.
Yeah, it is really, these kinds of things are the start of a much, much grander experience. But this kind of thing really helps in the fact that you're having really high quality headsets and whatnot, an experience that everybody can get in, an entire family can get in and enjoy it and wrap their mind around that's what that is.
Absolutely.
You know?
And it's funny though, because I have not heard like much about this at all. And like, and you are right. Like, and so what I think that the solution would be also as well for the manufacturers to realize that the headset is nothing without the software, and vice versa. You cannot have software without the headset. So, so I do a lot of live streaming and promoting the technology from what's inside of the headset. So I use it in a different kind of way, and so I support you, and I want to try it. I just want to try it. I want to go to Busch Gardens and try it.
Oh, it's fun. And actually, I remember, you know, we had gone through all of our development. We sat down and you know, did our internal studio tests with it and everything. I tell you, there was a universe of difference between seeing it in our studio and sitting on that ride and having all the motions, the sound, the wind, and all of a sudden it was like, wow, that really did feel real. You know,
Absolutely. I'm like the mouth of so I'm from Georgia, so it's true. I'm the mouth of the South, so I've been like, I've networked throughout the entire industry, so I will definitely let everybody know exactly what you guys are doing.
Cool.
So,
I appreciate that.
What specific portions did you work on?
Well, as an editorial director, essentially I start off at the beginning of the concept. Here's the script, make it a thing. And that's just, you know, sitting with the group and trying things and evolve it and working with the animators to, you know, kind of come up with what's the feel and pacing of our story. Also, my audio background really helped in kind of like, you know, building out the cadence of the narration and the character dialogue back and forth to fit in a specific amount of timing. And then we went and, you know, actually found the actors and kind of was able to give them direction to try to make it sound better, you know, like give us the real performance, make these characters a real thing. And then at the end, after, you know, all the wizards in our studio come up with this thing that looks like incredible, edit this back together and make it, you know, a final version of what that original glimpse was, you know, could have been almost a year ago, right? So it's kind of fun. It's like you get to, you know, create something and you get to also kind of see after you created it what other people can do with that idea, and then that goes huge. So.
Got a question online.
All right, from Raphael Leon, 2107 on Twitch. As an educator interested in video games, as pedagogical tools, I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce that word. I'd want to know if you see VR as having a future in education, and if so, how?
Interesting. Well, I definitely see VR, well, just the realities in general in education becoming a thing. Some people talk about that as, can you make it something that's developed in the classroom? From my lens, it's basically, I would love to find a way to start augmenting museums. Because essentially, like when people go there to learn and to be inspired, it's like, okay, so this is the right group to ask this question, right? Y'all played Assassin's Creed, right? Yeah, okay. So how much about history of those different environments did you learn from playing that game? I bet, right? Yeah, because it's like you're immersed in it, right? And it becomes not only something that, oh, I read about that, but something you experienced, right? I think when you start to do those kinds of augmentations to real places of education, then people have an emotional attachment to that thing. And that is the game changer, right? So.
The audio part, the audio is external, right?
Yes.
Okay. So I was thinking that it was per headset, like, the other headset, but that's not an issue. So technically, do you have renderers for each one of the headsets?
They all have their own computer.
They all have their own PC?
Yes.
But then you have to actually have a server actually combining the whole structure so that you will be able to render each one of
Everything's
those.
synchronized, yes.
Interesting.
So I'm curious, was there ever a quote beta, and did you do any A/B testing with live audiences?
Definitely. They had, after we set up the profile, of course, there was a lot of contractors and workers that dialed in the motion stuff. There's some safety things that obviously have to happen in a ride scenario to make sure that, you're up to snuff. And then they had what they call like early access. So certain pass members, were invited by the park to come out and try some stuff, try out the experience and provide their feedback. And that gave us time to kind of work through it. And then afterwards, after, even on opening day, we were there to kind of like help them through any little technical issues that, would start to come up. Busch Gardens was great. I mean, they were so ready for this. And they were, like really had done their homework on how to make this a wonderful experience for the people who came in and everything. And they just like, their staff was just really eager and kind of knew that they were going to go through this kind of evolution with this ride. And it just, they embraced all of it. And, I went there at opening day. I went there like 2 weeks ago. It took my whole family. Like the best way to show your family this is why I was late a few times is to take them on there and let them sit down and experience. And it was just great to not, say, well, that's a cool job to just go, that was really amazing experience, and that's a great feeling. And not to mention, like, this is something that game developers, we don't get to experience very often. Like in games, you release things to the public, you kind of hear the echo off the internet, right? People on the forums and whatnot. It is a totally different experience when you put together something like this and you sit with an audience and you ride this thing together and you hear people like yelling and in fear or happy or laughing or whatever. And it's just like, wow. I mean, talk about a really deep sense of gratification. It's incredible.
So I'd like to continue talking about dealing with the client.
Yes.
So all the parks know they need a new type of experience.
Yeah.
VR has been the thing, and in some cases I'm hearing from people that it's very much the client just saying, give me something VR, I don't know what I want.
Right.
And in other cases, they kind of are the leads right now. So how was it? How much hand-holding did you have to do? How much did they know coming in? How much was it a learning experience both sides?
Sure. Well, I think Busch Gardens actually had done their homework tremendously in this case. So they really did know a lot of what they wanted to do. And so it was a really cool co-development of like building on the idea of like how to take a ride that was, the concept of a ride that was good and make it like really good, and it was really cool that they were really in sync with us. They were in sync with us through the whole pre-production of it. and even when we were doing Ripomatics and Animatics and providing that feedback of like the insight that as a designer you don't get, and that's the real world feedback of like, here's things that people love about rides that exist. Like they've been doing their parks and whatever over 40 years. They have tons of insight about what guests love and what guests would like to experience. Even if you're an awesome design studio, that knowledge is invaluable, right? So it was wonderful to kind of get that and kind of work through that whole process with them. So
they already knew you never go wrong.
I think there was always that expectation. I just remember that when we were like, how are we working at Leprechauns, because that's such a comical thing. Yeah.
I have one more question.
Sure.
Okay. So my other question is kind of piggybacking off of what his question or whatever. But so what about there is experiences out there that isn't varied, and so how does a client choose their right development team, and why do you think so? And here's another thing too. Do you agree with the fact that the cheaper route isn't always the better route?
Right.
Right. So it's very important for people to know that too as well. That it's not always to go to the cheaper route, because there is games out there that is not.
Well, and I think what you're asking for is that there's people out there that are like, we want to be part of this new technology. We want to bring that to the public, and they'll just kind of hire whoever to do it.
Yeah.
Right? And what that is a lot of times a client paying a studio to learn that technology. That's a dangerous place, right? So where we had kind of an unusual advantage in this is that we had actually been making large format dome films and stuff for a very long time. So, we had already done this with mass audiences of, 500 people or whatever, and they can come in and experience these kinds of things. And we knew how to deal with camera movement and how to tell a story in a 360-degree environment and all that kind of stuff. That information is really helpful when you're trying to, convey that even on a smaller scale. Yeah, sure, we can take that concept and downsize that. Mm-hmm. So it's really trying to find what is your developer's history? What is the team that you're about to hire? What is their history in this format? And find the experts in that.
Right. Okay. So all you clients out there, you guys got the answer.
You got to do your research. Yeah, you got to do your research. Yeah.
So how'd you come up with a script for this ride? It's only 5 minutes, so I'm like, how'd you do that?
Yeah, well, and that's kind of, coming up with a script that's compelling is, you really have your writers to say, this is what we think that this should actually be, and then you start that whole process, and through both the Ripomatic and the Animatic, you tune it, because you say, okay, maybe scripting-wise, that's too lengthy, or I'm starting to see things visually that answer things I was doing with dialogue beforehand, because it's an evolving process, and then you kind of refine that and refine that and refine that. I mean, the job of both an editor and a writer is not necessarily creating from the ground up, but you're like a sculptor, right? You have your first pass, and this is kind of where we're starting, and you just chip away at it until it becomes the thing that you hoped it would be, right? And I think the big misconception about that is that it's something that happens quickly. It doesn't happen quickly. Like I said, there's massive amounts of revisions and reiterations, and some people look at that as like, oh, we didn't get it right, or oh, we got to start again, or whatever. I see that as like the next layer in refinement until you finally have this thing that you're like, I feel like I can, tell this story and the amount of time that I'm trying to tell it in the most convincing way, right? So be patient, and this is all about the game of persistence. Be persistent, keep your vision, there, and just chip away at it, and don't let the revisions get to you.
Thank you.
Sure.
How did you go about taking into consideration limitations that come with aiming it towards kids when it comes to reality, since they'll be a bit more sensitive?
Sure. Well, the other thing with kids that's kind of fun is obviously the fairy character, right? The avatar. Kids in general are usually less afraid of trying something or experiencing something if they've got a buddy, right? whether it's their parents or their best friend or whatever. And so that was kind of the whole point of like the pre-show and kind of the early part of just the opening part of the film being just about the fairy. Is the fairy is like, I'm fearless and I know I can do this, but I could use your help, that kind of thing. And that character helps build their confidence through experiencing this thing more confidently. Like, well, she's definitely not going to get hurt, so I'm going to be fine, and that's kind of the catalyst. Like I said, it becomes not only the visual focal point to pull you through the whole film, but also becomes like their relatable character, right?
But also,
not too scary for him.
Dragon, which is funny because he starts off that way, but again,
he
by
got a lot rounder.
by even the simple transition of like it's kind of sniffing you out, and it's like a fierce dog kind of like. After a while, you're like, no, that's a cool animal, right? So that's how it works.
But also considering like the sensitivities with the equipment for
Right.
children, as far as it goes with all the movement and things like that. Like, how was that process with?
That was cool, and that was really a part of Busch Gardens, like talking to us about don't call it equipment, don't call it like your headset and your screen or whatever. It was the emerald mask and all that stuff. I mean, you're tying it into the story, right? Like these are the
More
actual
distractions.
right. You're like, well, yeah, it's like I got the emerald mask and I got the enchanted lens. Well, I want to see what the enchanted lens does. It becomes a cool thing.
Like
it's
a
not
sleight of hand.
just the VR headset. Nobody wants to hear that. If you call it under a unique name, it becomes more inviting and more accessible to people of all ages. So, yeah.
Any more questions online? Okay, we're out of time. All right, so I'll ask the last question. Where do you find a shirt that eye or green?
Yeah, I went to a formal shop and I was explaining what it was, and the guy just gave me the most blank look. I'll check in the back. I really appreciate your time. Thank you for coming out.
This is Andrew Greenberg, Executive Director of the Georgia Game Developers Association, here at SimFest 2017 at lovely Columbus State University. We've had a great day of discussions on game development. I'm here with one of our speakers right now to go into a little bit more depth about what you discussed earlier today. Hillary, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, my name is Hillary Fleener. I teach programming classes here at Columbus State University, and I'm also our outreach coordinator. So I do a lot of the outreach to the schools and to the military, trying to get computer science out to everyone.
So one of the big topics we in the game industry have to deal with is how do we create effective characters who reach out to a wide audience, characters who are believable and fun and enjoyable all at once. So can you tell us a little bit about your presentation today?
So I talked today about how female video game characters have kind of changed over time, and we're definitely going in a positive direction with female characters. You know, we kind of started out in the 80s, and you know, Pac-Man got a bow, and it was Mrs. Pac-Man, which was cool. That was great. And then we kind of had some trouble in the 90s, where female characters tend to always be in bikinis or in a.
So, what do we have here?
Report says head trauma while on cleanup duty in Sector 2.
We're getting interference from the implant.
How are they awake?
Now what's going on?
Okay, here we go. Wait. The simulation's not obeying my reboot commands. If we don't contain the Z-DNA data, the virus could leak it to the outside world. Just don't die too much. Or at all. Your vitals are seriously erratic.
You've got 10 bloody seconds! Do it now!
Wait. Who is that? Work together if you can.
Zeds incoming in 3, 2, 1. Bam! Headshot, unlimited ammo. Kill streak. Berserker! Rampage! New weapon now available! Decimation! Bloodbath! You're insane!
These system glitches are getting really annoying.
Ugh, I'm questioning a lot of life choices right now.
It's Brittany Reggae from the Game Dev News Network. We're here at the Renaissance Waverly Hotel for the start of the second day of Southern Fried Gaming Expo. So we're here to walk around, talk to some developers, play some games, and check out some panels. So let's go. I'm here with Clint Fleetwood with Dragon Sojourn. Clint, can you tell us a little bit about the game?
Yeah, so Dragon Sojourn is a tabletop tactical game that where you combine a dragon with a rider with a weapon to make different units. We have different play modes. One is campaign mode, where you can actually go through a campaign where you have like long, drug-out battles. We also have PvP, where you can play against each other, or we just have a random drop-in arcade mode, where you can actually just make your units and then draw enemy cards and see how far you can go in it.
I'm here with Fernando Aragon from Steal the Show. Fernando, can you tell us a little bit about the game?
Yeah, so it's a party game for about 2 to 4 people, but it's a Shakespearean insult card game. You challenge other players to a battle of wits or battle of strength, and you use the Shakespearean insult cards to help you win.
And I'm here with Ilya and Alex from Voice Bowl. Guys, could you tell me a little bit about the game?
Yeah, so it's like foosball, but with your voice. It's called Voice Ball. Essentially, you make noises into a microphone, and it's all pitch based. So like the higher pitch you go, the higher up in the field that you get, lower low, and you're just trying to manipulate these voice waves or sound waves to hit this ball into a goal.
I'm here with Battles and Pirates. Can you tell me a little bit about the game?
Yeah, definitely. British versus Pirates. First off, my name's Apollo. British versus Pirates is a ship combat board game set during the golden age of piracy. It is every game that when you were a kid you wish you had, you now have as a grown man.
I'm here with Ron Jones from the Indie Cluster and his game Siege Tower. Ron, can you tell us a little bit about the game?
Well, sure. So Siege Tower is basically obviously inspired by the SiegeCon and everything like that. So I kind of hijacked the logo and said, you know what, this is a game conference. We need like a game kind of made out of it to help support it and share it and everything like that. So I kind of turned it into this tower defense game that throws you in the realm of nostalgia.
I'm here with Mike Poole and his game Barricade. Can you tell us a little bit about the game real quick?
Sure. It's a two-player arcade action game, which is a throwback to early titles from the 90s, such as Puzzle Fighters, Bust-A-Move, and Tetris Attack. It has a very brutal, competitive two-player mode that a lot of people enjoyed. Matter of fact, the game is so put together that a lot of conventions that we've already went to have let us use it for their tournaments.
I'm here with Robert Waller and his game Sinker. Can you please tell us a little quick elevator pitch on what your game's about?
Sure. So I call it a minimalist puzzle game. So what I think of is like giant fishing tackle. So you got a hook and you got a reel, and your whole job is to try to get the pucks in the hole. So that's the whole entire game. So I build you up slowly, give you one hole, one puck, and then kind of lead you through more complicated mechanics.
I'm here with Narv in his game, Elemental Rift. Can you give us a quick elevator pitch on what your game's about?
The game is a brawler game where you're trying not to put it on the screen before they knock you out. Last one standing is the winner. Players are fighting for omnipotent power. Last one standing gets the all glory of being able to control all the elements.
I'm here with Justin from Polyroll. Can you tell us a little pitch about the game?
Polyroll is a retro-style platformer, very much inspired by early 90s PC shareware games. And then it's got a little bit of Mario, a little bit of Sonic, a little bit of everything.
I'm here with Joseph Butler and his game Mageling. Joseph, could you tell us a quick bit about the game?
Sure. So Mageling is a dice allocation game, and it plays from 60 to 90 minutes. And basically the idea is that you're a young mage on a journey, and you are trying to save what is called the Evertree. So it's got this little story, and you're trying to move through this progression. But the core mechanism is all about building a grimoire, like a kind of a spell book, that you activate using custom dice.
I'm here with Katie Scott and two games, Tabletop Generals and Drunken Goat. Katie, can you give us a quick pitch on both games?
Yeah, sure. So Drunken Goats and Tabletop Generals are both really, really simple to pick up and easy to play. You don't have to spend a lot of time learning rules for either one of them, which is what's really nice about them. Drunken Goats is sort of our 21 and up optional drinking rules game. This is really simple. All you're trying to do is get a pair each of your 4 alcohol cards, whiskey, beer, tequila, and wine. The first person to get a pair of each wins. Tabletop Generals is a base-building military card game. What you're trying to do is be the first person to build your 8-card base. You can play with 2 or 3 players, or you can combine 2 decks and play with up to 6 people.
I'm here with Chad with his game Christmas Lights, a card game. Chad, can you give us a quick pitch about the game?
Sure. If you've played the game Hanabi, which is like a blind man's bluff kind of a game. So it's a competitive version of that. So players will each have a deck of bulbs in their hand, but you can't see your own cards, but you can see everybody else's cards. And so the object of the game is to complete 2 different light strands of a different set of patterns by trading bulbs with players, stealing bulbs from players, and trying to assemble them and to try to in a race so you can build 2 strands the fastest.
I'm here with Craig at Southern Fried Gaming Expo. Craig, you have a couple games here. Can you tell us a little bit of a quick pitch about them?
Sure. This one over here is Murders and Acquisitions. I produced that one, designed it a couple years ago. It published last year. It's basically tabletop RPG. All of these are RPGs. And that one's about climbing the corporate ladder through whatever means necessary. So murder, intrigue, subterfuge, theft, whatever it takes. This one right over here is Capers, and that one's all about superpowered gangsters and feds in the Prohibition era. So 1920s gangsters, but with kind of sort of superpowers.
So then, have you been having a good time here? Have people got to see the game?
Yeah, definitely. We definitely love Southern Fried Gaming Expo. They've definitely been one of our supporters from the beginning. Last year, they had us like in a different room, and then we kind of was working out some better options. And this year, they basically said, you know what, we're just going to give you the whole room. We want you to basically do your thing.
Yeah, it's been going pretty well. This is our third con this summer. We're on a con tour because we're going to be having a Kickstarter soon. So it's exciting to get to see a lot of people play the game. We've had a lot of really positive results and really good suggestions from the players.
Yeah, no, it's been really good. I don't know, it's kind of the type of game that kind of draws a crowd the more people play it, because you can probably hear it in the background right now, but people are like making a lot of whooping noises, which brings more people over.
Great traffic and lots of good comments, and it's really gratifying. This is only the second time I've had the game out where it's finished and people could actually buy it. And when you get somebody to actually buy the game while they're sitting down and playing the demo, that's really gratifying.
Yeah, we've been getting a lot of really good traction, a lot of really good feedback. And, a lot of people like it, especially the older guys. Again, they get to, be a kid and be a pirate, so it's fun.
The reception's been really good. It's got a very clear target audience, and the people who dig it really dig it. And, it's been fun.
Yeah, absolutely. We did a quick panel over there on game design, and we've got some demos happening all day. And it's been great. There's been a lot of excitement.
Yeah, we have a demo table right across from us. We've had a lot of people be able to play, and a lot of people have really enjoyed it because you get to play a lot of rounds. You're not spending an hour trying to set the game up, trying to teach the rules, trying to go through it.
There's been a kind of a steady stream of people coming by. It slowly builds across Saturday because it's like Saturday. people start to kind of trickle in and everything kind of rolls up, and by the time we get to Saturday afternoon, it's pretty busy. And then I'm not sure what to expect for the evening. This is my first year here, but I know that the gaming area behind us has gotten pretty busy.
It's been really busy. I haven't really had a chance to take a break the whole day so far.
Okay, well then what kind of feedback have you been hearing?
People are really enjoying it. They like how quick and responsive it is, the variety of the cast, the unique characters, the unique items, the helpers that come in to make special guest appearance. They love all of it.
I actually showed this game last year at Southern Fried, and it was not finished yet. So that was the time where I really collected a lot of feedback and implemented it. Now it's kind of a done game, and the feedback I'm collecting more is about what should I do next time.
Feedback? No, I guess I haven't heard too much because I'm not actually running the demos. I've got someone over there so I will hear all the feedback, I'm sure, at the end of the day. But people have seemed interested in the concept, so that's made me really happy.
Yeah, it's been great. The convention's been really nice. Everybody's been really friendly and really positive about everything that we've had here.
Okay.
There's plenty of people stopping by, checking things out. I've sold a handful of things. Talk to people about other conventions and about game stuff that they're designing and having a good time.
Where can we get some contact info? How can people find you?
You can find the Coming Soon page on Steam right now if you just search Polyroll on Steam. Or you can probably find it by looking up our other game, which is currently on Steam, which is Clash Force. And we released that back in October. And Polyroll should be coming out this coming October.
You can look at dragonsoldier.com, or you can find us on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram.
Well, you can find me personally on ronjonestheartist.com. That links to all my comics, all my games, all my paintings, all that kind of stuff and everything like that. But actually, the Indie Cluster actually links to my game and everyone else's games as well, because we're the Atlanta community of independent game developers. So you can just go to indiecluster.com, link to everything and everything like that. Follow our Twitter, our newsletter, and our Discord, and it'll be good.
Google Sinker, S-I-N-K-R, no E, but it's also on my website at Waller Digital. That's WAHLER.digital.
www.firesoft.com. Firesoft is spelled P-H-Y-E-R-S-O-F-T. And once you go on the website, you can access all our social links from there.
Yeah, hungryformoregames.com. That's our main website. And you can also, if you just search Steal the Show, a theatrical party card game, the Kickstarter page will also come up where you can find more information.
So we're Hella Velvet. So I think that's Velvet _ Hella, and also Instagram at Hella Velvet.
www.nrutd.com would be my company's website. We've got some information up there. We should have the Steam page up and rolling probably by the end of the next month.
So 25th Century Games, so 25thCenturyGames.com. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, you name it. And obviously check out the Kickstarter Christmas lights.
Yeah, both of our games are available on drunkengoatsgame.com.
FamiliarGames.net is our website. And Mage League will be coming to stores in about 3 to 4 months. So you can look out for it there, and we'll be hitting Kickstarter again in the next year.
You can check out everything I'm designing at nerdburgergames.com. I am at nerdburgercraig.
So everything you need to know is at britishversuspirates.com.
Well, thank you, Apollo. I hope you're having a good time and that, keeps going well.
Yeah, you guys have a good time, too. Thank you for watching so much. See you later.
Three, two, one, brawl!
Like that Titan is going down. Oh, it's going down so fast, and usually you just can't do anything about it. So looks like GSU are the Smite champion.
All right, here we go.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have Khan and Ash already on the point. Ruckus up top in that belt.
Yeah, welcome to the Georgia Esports League Spring Championship at MomoCon. We have teams from 4 grade schools here today. Kennesaw State University, the Savannah College of Art and Design, Atlanta, University of Georgia, Georgia State University.
Ladies and gentlemen, fans of esports, make some noise in the audience. Let them know on the other side of MomoCon something amazing is happening here. Now, who's ready to see a brawl? Who's ready to see Brawlhalla!
Hello, everybody. We're going to do our first ever voice ball tournament. Voice ball is a game that's a lot like foosball, but you play with your voice.
First person to score wins.
Who's going to get it? Yellow up high! Yay!
Oh,
UGA takes it, and they are your Brawlhalla champions.
That was crazy.
GSU are the Smite champions. Well, I'll say one thing. It's nice to see, a one-sided victory.
KSU is trying their best, but can't get to the point, trying to get there as quickly as possible.
And that's game. Wow, what a match. What a match. Good job.
Move! Get in the fight, soldier.
BC spotted! She got her there!
Let's get him, mate.
Target red Bravo 295.
Keep a low profile. First one to spot the enemy gets a beer. Get in there and blow him away. Scratch one of the bastards. Bloody VC over there. Weapons dry, we're clear.
All right. We've reached the end of SimFest 2018. About to kick it off with a keynote, but first things first. Thank you all for coming. I want to thank the volunteers for all that volunteered. Give them a round of applause for me. And to all the officials that helped out today, whether it's just guiding volunteers, registration, or just making sure this all ran smoothly, give them a round of applause. Before we get into the keynote, we are going to raffle off 5 wonderful gas masks. Not sure if they actually work or not to alleviate whatever it is, but if you do win, come see me at the end of the keynote so I can email you a Steam code for Killing Floor 2. Yay. So.
From Tripwire Interactive.
Yes, all of which are from Tripwire. So. And you get a nice collector's box too. So. Nice chance of winning. So. First winner, James Hicks. Yeah, no. Gonna give 4 other people an opportunity. Evan Giles.
Yay!
Paul Bartlett.
You were on Siege with it. And it does work.
Oh, and Paul, happy birthday.
Oh, yeah.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Paul. Happy birthday to you. Karen Williams. Blanton Whitworth. All right, I'll just get with you all to give you email your Steam codes because we do have 5 that go with these, and they are PC. I've been told many times to say that it is PC. So I think everyone is right. So well, previous years we've had success with keynotes. We've had thanks to Jesse for coming back this year as just a regular speaker. Heard it was a nice success, right? VR. Bob Carter was last year. This guy I've known him for quite some time, but to come and say a little bit more about Chris Patterson, our keynote, is Anthony Obando, the CSU Student Chapter GGA President.
Okay, so I think it was sometime in the fall semester when I decided to get out of the house for a bit, and I had noticed that this place called Bricks and Minifigs was open. I had heard that it was like a Lego retailer. I didn't know much about it, so I decided to take a step in. And I walked in, and there's this guy with a sick beard behind the counter named Chris. Yeah, you can see it's pretty nice. It's a nice beard. I mean, it's a nice beard regardless. And I think after every day after that, I would walk out with at least something. Certain days, no, because the budget's kind of tight. I can't always be buying Legos every day. And to think that this guy, I didn't know what his whole struggle about business startups were. And, well, I think I'll let him speak a bit more about it. Ladies and gentlemen, Chris Patterson, the franchisee of Bricks and Minifigs, or franchise owner.
Hey, good evening, afternoon, or wherever we're at now. So let me get this turned back on again. So hopefully you guys have had a fun day by the sounds of it and talking to a couple of people. It seems like it's been a good event. So I know a lot of you are looking to get home here, so we won't take up all night from you, but we'll kind of get through and start off with a little bit about myself. That's the uninteresting part, and then a little bit about kind of business startup and some of what goes into it and some of the maybe struggles or difficulties you may face or may have to think about if you're starting up your own business. So backstory for myself, just a little bit. Originally born in Scotland. I moved to Columbus, Georgia when I was 10 years old. I've been here ever since. Despite my wife wanting to move back to the UK, we're still here. Used to play a lot of golf. Obviously, I like Lego. Otherwise, I think I'm probably in the wrong business. Love spending time with my girls. I've got a 9-year-old and a 5-year-old, and pretty much if I'm not working, they're playing with them. So, a little bit of background on work history for me. First job I ever had was a vet clinic. It was entry level. It was kind of a necessity job, as in my parents came home in the middle of the day in the summer and said, "Get out of bed and go find a job." So, I think like a lot of teenagers, I got my freedom with my car, and I used that freedom and stayed in bed all day long because I could do whatever I wanted at that point in time. So anyway, they told me to go get a job. I went out and found one and started next day. He hired me on the spot, and it was cleaning runs, cleaning kennels, taking care of the animals, bathing dogs. Spent 2 years there. By the time I left, I was assistant in surgery and in the clinic rooms, and just a lot of good work experience and a lot of fun. And something I thought for a while there I may have pursued as a career, going into the vet field. But there's a lot to it. And the toughest part for me, those animals come in and sometimes they don't go back out again. And that became draining, and realized for me that wasn't going to be a future plan. So I left the vet clinic and I got an awesome job as a third shift gas station clerk. I was in college at the time, and I worked Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night, 12-hour shifts. And man, it was rough. I see a lot of characters coming in, most people don't go to the gas station at 3 or 4 in the morning, It's kind of in a couple of shady parts of town. I bounced back and forth, so a lot of stories from that. But you know what? It helped pay the bills, and it allowed me to focus on college during the week. After that, I got a job at Home Depot. So it was supposed to be just part-time. Started part-time in Columbus. Worked my way up. When we opened the Phoenix City store, got promoted to department manager there. Spent just 5 years at Home Depot. Got recruited out by district manager at Big Lots, who used to be a district manager for Home Depot. So made the jump. Sounded like a great story. Put in a lot of hours. If anyone's familiar with Big Lots, it's kind of discount resell. They get whatever they can and turn around and sell it. So it turned into a lot of hours. And during that time, my wife and I had our first child. And I spent most of that at Big Lots and not at home watching her grow up. So I decided, hey, it's time for me to go find something where I have more time at home. I've got more of a set schedule. I'm not working 6-7 days a week, 70, 80, 90 hours a week. So kind of took a step back and went to go be a sales rep for Coca-Cola. That was early spring. Stayed with them for a few months, and they did after summer cutoffs. A lot of companies build up in the summer, so I was kind of one of those last guys in, first one out. But thankfully, after that, I got with Nestle, another big food service industry. Everybody's probably heard of them. A lot of stuff going on, but spent 5 years with Nestle. Started as a route driver with them, doing sales for their pizza and ice cream lines. By the time I left, I was district sales manager for them, covering Atlanta, Georgia, all the way down to the Florida line, and kind of Montgomery, Alabama, across through Macon. So pretty big territory, a lot of guys working, and a lot of fun. But still, I found myself spending a lot of time away from home. We had our second daughter when I was at Nestle, and I wanted to have something where I was at home every day. I wasn't traveling. I wasn't spending the nights in hotel rooms. So I came up with this bright idea to become self-employed. I started doing research, and that's when I, in the process, came up with Bricks and Minifigs. So we spent a lot of time, and this wasn't a 2-week process or a 2-month process. This was, kind of a 2-year process, finding out what the right fit was going to be. My oldest daughter had gotten into Legos. I was an absolute Lego nut as a kid, and I think like most kids, it goes in a closet at some point in time. You forget about it. You get into high school, and it's all about, fitting in, or girls or boys, and, being the cool one, or what clubs you want to be in, and all that sort of stuff. And the Lego just kind of got lost to the dark closet, covered in dust. So we'd gotten it all back out. Thankfully, my parents never threw it away. They held on to it in the dark depths. And my 9-year-old was able to get it out. I mean, she was, 5 or 6 at the time, and start playing with it, and kind of got that passion reinvigorated in myself. So I started looking, what can I do that's going to be fun for me and fun for the kids and fun for the family as well. And found Bricks and Minifigs. Anybody that's not, like Anthony said, we're a reseller of Lego product. That's all we do. We buy, sell, trade Lego. We do other things, camps, birthday parties, events. We just wrapped up a stop animation camp this week for the kids, so teaching the kids stop animation techniques and kind of the intro into that. It's the third one we've done at the store this year, so kids love it. It's big success. It's my favorite one of all the camps that we do because it's hands-on. It's nothing but complete imagination, and the kids can go home and they can do it themselves. It takes nothing more than an iPhone or any kind of smartphone these days, or tablet, and off they go. So like I said, why Bricks and Minifigs for me? Lego was important. It's kind of ageless. Just as many adult collectors and stuff as you do young kids playing with it. Lots more with adult collectors, and they're serious and they're looking for specific things. It's an educational toy. I mean, again, you'll see architects that have Lego in their buildings. They use it for kind of small scale modeling, kind of get an idea how things go together. Encourages creativity. One set of Lego, if anybody knows, I mean, it's endless. Just because the picture on the box says, hey, this is supposed to be a spaceship, it doesn't mean that's what it has to be. You can put those bricks together any way you want, and the sky's the limit. And it's a beautiful form of art. I'm sure everybody's probably seen Lego sculptures or mosaics out there, and it's just something to be very unique. And so for me, that was just something that aligned and it clicked. And after seeing a few stores, I went home after a road trip, told my wife, "This is it. Let's go plan a road trip so you can see one." And she was on board before we ever took that road trip. She done the homework, but was sold on the idea too. Took her to see the Memphis store, and she fell in love as well. So small business dream, and I think a lot of people, you want to be your own boss. You want to do things your way, and there's a lot of reasons why. Let's go. Here we go. I've got to click on the right part of the screen. As you see, tech is not my forte. So yeah, small business dream. One of the reasons a lot of people want to be your own boss. You want to set that own schedule, and you want to do it the way you want to do it. The reality of small business, though, is not necessarily always that way. There's tons of government rules and regulations that you've got to follow. You may want to do it this way, but legally you might not be allowed to. At the end of the day, your business revolves around one thing, and that's the consumer. Whether it's brick and mortar and you've got a retail store, whether it's software development that you're developing for someone, at the end of the day, the consumer is the one that's going to drive how successful you are or what you're working on. And HR and legal, anybody that's worked before, HR and legal department, they can be your best friends or your worst enemies. I always look at them as a best friend. It's a great thing to bounce people off. There's a lot of contacts I've got from, previous jobs, especially some of those corporate ones, and it's the ones you want to hold on to. Because you ever have a question in mind, HR and legal is one of those important things. You can get yourself in a whole lot of trouble, both from a business standpoint and from an actual government standpoint as well, if you're not in line with that. So even though you may want to do something some way, there's a lot more that goes into it. So franchising, a brief thing for anybody that doesn't know, I'm sure everybody knows of past franchises every single day. You pass Burger King or Domino's, Bricks and Minifigs, Plato's Closet. There's a lot of franchises out there. But basically, it's a method for expanding a business model or distributorship through services through a licensing agreement. So the franchisor who owns the right to this business model says, hey, we want to expand. We don't want to do it necessarily ourselves. So we'll sell the business model out and we'll provide support from the back end. So advantages of it, you get that freedom of small business ownership, but you got that large support network behind you. If you decide you want to go and open a McDonald's franchise, obviously you've got a multi-billion-dollar corporation that knows what's going on, that guide you through that process. You don't have to necessarily have any business experience with a franchise. There's a lot of training and a lot of knowledge in behind there. You get on a early end of a franchise, maybe just as budding, they have a few locations. Obviously, you're not going to get that same network. You open a McDonald's store, everything's already there. They're going to come in and tell you where to put it, how to run it, what to do, how many payroll hours to spend, how to order your product. But depending on what your goals are, you can go in there and you can have a little bit of knowledge, you can have a little bit of business knowledge or a lot of business knowledge, and depending on how involved you want to be in the setup. Franchises have a higher success rate compared to other small businesses, startups. So everyone's probably heard stats, and the stats will vary from whichever source you look at it. But the general one that seems to be honest, most small businesses ultimately fail within the first year. And most small businesses don't fail from a lack of understanding of the product or the knowledge or the service that they're driving. It's the lack of knowledge in behind it and the ability to run that business. And finally, a lot of franchises haven't that established reputation. So you can go in and you're not building from scratch. There's a lot of disadvantages too. You sign up for a franchise, you got a formal agreement with that franchisor. So you're signing a legal document saying, hey, I give you this in return for this. And generally it's a set period of time, 5 years, 10 years, 3 years, depending on who it is. It's not something you can go a year down the road and say, hey, I don't want to do this anymore. At that point in time, you're committed to it. You can't just close the doors, lock up shop, and go home. It's less flexible on how you run your business. There's rules in place, there's regulations. You have a set business model. Again, depending on the level of the franchise and what kind of franchise, it may be generalities on how you run things, or it may be very strict in terms of this is the absolute process for the entire day, and this is the process that you follow from the minute you walk in the door to the minute you close down. Profit sharing with the franchisor. So when you sign up for that franchise agreement, they're going to take a percentage of your sales. So that's what they get out of the agreement. And that's every single month. So it doesn't matter how much you make, they're going to get that set percentage. And it varies based on the franchise, but that's something you owe to them. And most of them are going to have minimums in there. So if you have a bad sales month and you don't meet that minimum, you're still going to pay more than that. So you still have to cut the check to the franchise because they're going to get a certain amount out of the deal at the end of the month as well. And the worst thing, no guarantee that the franchisor has to renew your contract. So maybe you've got a 3-year contract or a 5-year contract. Things are going great for you. The end of that time period, you're looking to sign up for another 5 years, and the franchisor says, you know what? We really don't want Bricks and Minifigs in Columbus anymore. It's not ideal market. It's not working out for us. We're not going to renew with you anymore. Now, most of the time, if you're running a successful business, the franchisor is not going to do that. But if they have a corporate shift on their top end, or their dynamic shift as to what their ultimate goals are, you could catch yourself in a situation like that as well. So the biggest thing running the business is there's a whole lot of stuff that you think you know going in, and you're going to find out that there's a whole lot more that you don't know, and it's going to be all situational. So when challenges arise, where do you go for help? If you're self-employed, you have your own small business, you don't have that HR or legal department down the hallway like you may have in a big company. You don't have a marketing team to work on marketing to push your product. And you have to know where you want to go in order to get help with that. There's a lot of consultants out there that you can use, but consultants are expensive. You also have to be able to weed out, and you have to be able to audit the consultants as well. So you're working with a legal team, you want to make sure that they're up to par or HR on the current laws, current legalities, current hiring practices. And you have to know when they give you that information, that the information is good. And you have to be able to check on that. Accounting, you're now your own accountant unless you hire that or contract out with somebody else. And putting your money in somebody else's hands for your business is a big deal. You got to make sure that you have the ability to audit your account. So if you don't have some background in accounting and how your cash flow works, you can end up in a lot of trouble. You have to be able to go behind every single month, look at the paperwork, or every quarter, or however you set it up, and say, this is what my accountant says I made, this is what I spent, here are my biggest expenditures, and make sure that those numbers are good. And at the end of the day, make sure that your bottom line is healthy and growing. So every problem lands on your desk. End of story. You're a business owner. You got to be a jack of all trades. Whether it's a maintenance problem and the bathroom's not working, whether it's lights are going out, you lose your internet service and you have to figure out how to run a transaction or how to upload code or whatever the case may be, you have to know how to fix every problem or know how to immediately get in contact with somebody that can. Like we talked about, hiring outside help and consultants, we won't drain that, but the big thing is you got to know where to go. So sales, service, and marketing, one of the biggest for small businesses. What are you selling? Are you selling code for a new game? Are you selling product in a store? Are you selling an online service? Are you selling yourself and your image? You have to know specifically what it is in order to set up everything else about the business. Why are consumers going to buy that from you? What differentiates you, your product, your services from somebody else's? Is it better in terms of computer games? I mean, there's a vast market out there. I haven't played games in quite some time with young kids, but there's a lot of options. What's going to make your game better than the next person? What's going to make your company that's going in and patching games or working on the new technology for games better than the other ones that are out there? When do you intend to sell it? Is this something you intend to do the next few weeks, the next 6 months, the next 3 years? If you've got a long-term project, what's going to change between now and the point where you're ready to go to market? As you guys know, technology is changing every day. You may develop a product today, but if you're not going to have it ready for 6 months even in your industry, 6 months could be a changer. There could be 2 or 3 more steps out by then. You're looking more long-term, a year, 2, 3 years, technology is becoming the point where it's becoming obsolete over that time period now. Who are you going to sell it to? Who's your market? Is it kids? Is it gamers? Is it adults? Is it grandparents? You have to be able to dive in and, you might have something that crosses multiple markets and you can market that to various groups. But you have to know that target market. You're always going to have that one target that you're pushing for that fits your demographic for whatever it is that you're selling. And finally, where are you going to sell your products and services? We said, maybe you have a brick and mortar store. Maybe it's online. Maybe you're doing freelance development. But you have to know where you're going to be in order to know where you're going. So marketing for me, I think this was probably one of the biggest things, and it's one of the most important things out there for any business. There's that old saying, when business is good, you have money to market, and when business is bad, you need to market. And that's something that, you know, right off the bat, you should always have to market, whether it's yourself, your products, your services. So for me in business, I've got a lot of different aspects that I'm marketing for, depending on the time of the year, what we're trying to push. Might be Lego birthday parties, maybe collectibles, maybe new in box sets, could be Lego Duplo sets for young generation, might be gift cards. And every single one of these I'm marketing to a different demographic. Birthday parties, we're looking at moms with young children. Biggest demographic for us, 5 to 15 years old. Now, we've had some adult parties as well, but those, of course, are not the norm. But I think we all know that for the most part, moms are the ones that are planning birthday parties for kids. Again, this is generalizations or exceptions to the rules, but I've got to get that message out to parents. Collectibles are adult males for the most part. You're looking for more expensive stuff, rare stuff, stuff that generally has a higher price tag to it. Kids, most of the time, they may want it, but they don't have the finance in order to support that. So you're looking at adult males for my business. New in box Minecraft sets, good example. It's younger boys, 8 to 10. Minecraft, what an incredible product started off. I mean, it's just absolutely went crazy. I know it's still building in the crossovers, but of course, Lego's picked up on that as well and picked up on it years ago, and it's one of the very successful line for Lego and just something that's kind of crossed those boundaries of, you know, computer gaming and hands-on play. Lego Duplo sets, it's parents with newborns and toddlers, males and females. Duplo is one of those products you can get into a kid's hand from the day they're old enough to hold something. Both my girls had it, you know, a few months old. It's big enough they can't swallow it, but, you know, the quicker you can get something in the hand, it helps out with the dexterity, and, you know, we're going to push products to that. Gift cards is kind of the catch-all. It's a little bit of everyone, but anybody that walks in the store looking for something for their grandson or their niece and their nephew, but they don't know if they're into Star Wars or Minecraft or Ninjago, or they like the free bill, or they like architecture, that's where gift cards come into play. It's not necessarily one of those things you spend a lot of money on advertising, but it's one of those things you always have to be aware of and make sure consumers know that you've got it. Aunts, uncles, most of the time they know their kids, grand or nieces and nephews, they like Lego. They just don't know exactly what they like. Again, this was the hardest thing for me as a business owner, is figuring out marketing, because it's different. And it's different in Columbus, Georgia than it is in Atlanta, Georgia. Different in Atlanta than it is in New York. And you've got to drill into your market and your target audience and what resonates with that audience. The mindset of your audience here is different from the mindset in super scale large city. Mindset, again, would be different in Columbus than it would be if you got out into really rural areas. So shop small, and anybody that's looking to start a small business, you guys should understand your impact on the community that you live. Whether you're shopping, setting up a retail location locally, whether you're setting up an office to do development, still going to be part of that local small business network. So studies will show you, and again, you'll see a little variation on dollars and impact out there, but for every $100 earned by a small business, 70% of that stays in the local economy. Only $43 of non-locally owned businesses stay in the local economy. So it's a great impact to support your local businesses or to open a local business yourself. You're not only being able to support yourself, but you're also giving back to the community at the same time. It may not necessarily feel like it, but you know your money stays in the place where you live for the most part. That's where you go shopping. That's where you spend the majority of your time. Small businesses help to bridge a sales and service gap that national companies just can't do. National companies is a very more rigorous set structure. Your small businesses, typically the ones that are going to stay open late for you on Christmas Eve, if you call them and say, hey, we had a problem, little Johnny's Lego set didn't make it in the car with us, can we come and get one? Those big businesses, most of the time, closing time's 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock, that's when they're shutting the doors and going home. Small businesses accounted for 60% of the new jobs created since the end of the recession. Now, that was quite some time ago, but small business growth continues to drive. It continues to pick up. There are more people that are realizing that, hey, they want to work for themselves, whether they're doing contract work or freelance work or development. But that's all creating jobs where it's not going into a corporation. It's staying local in some form. Nationally, small businesses donate 250% more to charity than the chains. To me, that's a great number. I think Columbus, we're very lucky. We've got some huge companies that do a lot of great things in our community. But nationally, not everyone's like that. And small businesses are the ones that are supporting your schools and supporting, your local organizations, your local nonprofits. So advice to you guys, if you're starting a small business, once you've done your research, do it again, do it again, do it again, and have somebody else check it. You can research. Always, 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 always do what you say you're going to do. I can't stress that one enough. It's one of those, your word is your bond. If you say you're going to do it, you need to stick to that, even if you decide that necessarily wasn't the right thing or you should have done something else, or heck, you just wanted to do something else. You've already made that commitment and you have to stick to it. Never assign a task to an employee that you're unwilling to do yourself. If anybody's had a job where it tells you to go clean the bathrooms and you know that they never went and have ever cleaned them or are willing to do it themselves, if you're not willing to do those small tasks, how can you expect your employees to be willing to do those small tasks? Down to the little things of, hey, the bathroom's a mess. We've got to go clean it. It just needs to be taken care of. It's the right thing to do. Never leave a task until tomorrow that you can complete today. You never want to leave work on your desk if you can avoid it. Now, there's going to be days you have work that rolls 2 or 3 days, but if you have the ability to complete the job today, get it knocked out. You may say, hey, tomorrow is going to be a light schedule. I'll finish it tomorrow. But what happens tomorrow when something else lands on your desk and all of a sudden you've got the work from the day before and you've got this new work that you have to take care of? All of a sudden, the task that you could have completed today may get pushed out a week from now before you get a chance to complete it. Or it may get pushed out 6 months, or may never get done at all, and it may have been a great idea. Never stop educating yourself. That doesn't necessarily mean when you're done with school, go back and sign up for another degree, but you can go online, read, follow people online, follow those business owners, CEOs, small business owners, local politicians, local figureheads. Find out what they're reading, find out what they're working on. Educate yourself that way. Even if it has nothing to do with your industry, find something that you enjoy or you're passionate about or interests you just a little bit. Spend time reading and educating yourself on it. And make it personal. You'll hear a lot of times, hey, it's business, it's not personal. When it comes to you managing your small business, it's always going to be personal. Whether it's your employees, small business, small workforce, typically right off the bat until you grow, you're going to have a personal connection with those employees. You're going to have a personal connection with customers and with consumers. And understand that, yes, it is a business and you have to make business decisions, but it doesn't mean to say you can't be personal along the way as well. Recommended reading for me. It's read a lot of books over the years. These are ones that have stood out for me. You can shoot a picture. I know Rob has got a copy of this, so if you're interested in it. But the more you read, the better input you can get management-wise. If you're going to run a small business, get as many management books and techniques as you can possibly get. Read them all. Somewhere in the midst of all of those, you'll find a way that works for you. There's not one of these that's the right way to do it. I don't think there's a book out there that's the right way to manage or the right way to start a small business. But the more information you give yourself and the more you read, the better off you're going to find the right combination that works for yourself. All right, well, that's all I've got. Any questions I can answer for you guys today?
If you want to come up and ask your question to the mic for the live stream. So quick question, a lot of franchisors will require you to have a business plan in place and often have a template for a business plan. I'm guessing you have had a business plan at least when you started.
Yep.
How would what you do now? Well, first, can you describe the business plan, and then how would you do it differently now than when you first started the franchise?
No, yeah, that's a great question. And yeah, having a business plan together, I mean, that's absolute number one thing. Whether you're looking for investors, looking to invest in a franchise, it's something, no matter what happens, unless you're just going to 100% fund it yourself, you're going to be required to have. Even if you're funding it yourself, you should do it. It's the right way to get the information down. It's never something you should shortcut on. But it's kind of the heart and soul. And when you first open a business, that's what's going to guide you through those first year or two of business, is that business plan. You're going to formulate projections on numbers. You're going to formulate your budget before ever opening the doors or ever selling anything. All the information comes from a lot of research. And it's going to be different for every single business that you open. I definitely go back and tweak some things now that I would from before. A lot of the information that I gathered and formulated my business plan was talking to other store owners, other franchise owners from Bricks and Minifigs franchise, but also other local franchises as well, and how their current setup differed from kind of the national trend on things. Numbers were changed. There's a lot of numbers specifically. Obviously, I can't discuss in specifics, but percentages of maybe what your payroll in Columbus, Georgia is going to differentiate from payroll percentages in, Knoxville, Tennessee, or New York City. Your general customer flows, a lot of, as we're setting up projections, is when are your customers going to shop your business? What are the things you have going on? For Bricks and Minifigs, we do a lot of birthday parties on the weekend. That's also when the majority of people go shopping, is on the weekend. So you know that doesn't matter what the sales numbers are, you have to have a set amount of people in the store to cover birthday parties and customers and sales. And a lot of the numbers, you don't have them ahead of time. You make the best projection you can. But that business plan is also a living document. So a year in, when we hit our year mark in April, we sat down and reconfigured all the numbers, reconfigured all the budget to budget for year two, and to make sure we're staying on with that. So, does that answer your question?
Yeah. What were the specific areas when you got that you had never thought about before? What did it?
I've been lucky that I got to work on business plans with some previous employers. So there was a lot of stuff that I saw that wasn't necessarily new. Now, when you talk about small business ownership, of course, there's not as many buckets as there necessarily are in some big corporation type things. Whether it's fees, franchise fees, estimated sales, payroll. But what you find with small business is your percentages are way higher than they're going to be for a corporation. So payroll percentage for a small business, you may be looking in double digits, whereas for a corporation, you're a lot of times looking in low single digits for the cost of payroll for them to operate that business, whether you're talking, big box Walmart or Home Depot or Target versus small box store like a Bricks and Minifigs or small local restaurant. So yeah, payroll percentages was probably one of the biggest things in kind of doing the analysis. It was, hey, we're definitely going to have to allocate more here because it just takes more for a small business to operate that way.
I'll ask a question about hiring, since I know a lot of folks here are going to be job hunting soon.
Mm-hmm.
As an employer of a small business, you generally have to find more of a generalist. You have to find people who do a lot of roles.
Yep.
So what are you looking for in employers and employees, and what impresses you most about a potential employee?
Yeah, for me, it's all about personality. If someone comes in, they're outgoing, they've got a great personality, we can teach them the product, we can teach them the process. They don't have to be a Lego expert walking in the door. There's certain things for me that are definitely a plus, being familiar with Lego product, being familiar with pop culture, your Star Wars, your superhero, obviously all that translates. But biggest thing for me is attitude and enthusiasm. Someone comes in the door and they've got a great attitude, we can teach them the rest. So I think you'll find that with most employers, even past history for myself with some of the big companies, it's a case of we can teach them the ropes, teach them the process, but attitude is everything. So, any other questions?
How long have you been open?
A year and 4 months. So, yeah, we made it past the first year, so that's always a good thing. So, second milestone will be the 5-year mark. That's the the next big one based on the statistics. So.
When are you putting the girls to work?
Great question. My 9-year-old is interning this summer with me, so she made the choice that she wanted to come to work every day. She's got special projects that she does, and in fact, she's made a Mario wall that we're going to be putting up next week. So she's got a ton of Mario figures, and Mario, whether it's the mushrooms or the brick walls or Mario. She made this great Yoshi that sits probably right about a foot high that we're going to make this Mario montage above the doors of the building. So that's a project she picked for the summer. So I'm excited to start getting it up next week. So 5-year-old, once she gets a little bit calmer and a little more focused, we'll get her in. So she'll spend all day building minifigures and the exact same minifigure with as many times as she can. So you'll have 50 of the same minifigure out of the tables lined up. So, but repetition. So she's getting there as well. So. But no, I mean, I think, and that's one thing my wife and I talked about, the advantages, 9-year-old will have a lot of benefit from, coming in and saying, hey, she went to work and, she cleans glass, she cleans the floor. It's not just going to the Lego store to play all day, and we make her do her reading and schoolwork while she's there as well. But, she coming in and putting a good use, so.
I'll look at if there's time for it, but kind of your origin story, what made you decide to leave the corporate world and go out on your own?
Yeah, so the biggest thing for me was time with family. So worked a couple of small jobs, got into Home Depot, and then when I was at Big Lots, had our first child. We went through a lot of management and personnel issues at Big Lots when I was there, unfortunately, and left me spending 70, 80, 90 hours a week with a newborn baby at home that I didn't get to see very often. So it was 6-7 days a week. We were down to, we should have had, I think 3 salaries, and we had 2. So we were working 6-7 days a week and sometimes open to close. So it was just one of those, work for family, I think at the end of the day. So work can be fun, but at the end of the day, we're working for a purpose. Most of us don't work just out of pure enjoyment. It's for an end goal, whether that's spending time with family or, going on vacations or money to work on a muscle car or whatever the case is. For me, I love spending time with family. I love work, as well. I'm a workaholic. And, I had to get in a position where I wasn't spending nights in hotel rooms and, gone for 3, 4, 5 days at a time. So, yeah, no problem. Thank you. Any other questions?
Someone in chat wanted to know if they could get your slideshow anywhere.
I'll definitely, I'll provide it, make sure Rob's got a copy of it. And
okay, and we'll put up the link.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks. Awesome.
No problem. All right. Well, I appreciate you guys hanging on. I know you've had a very long day and very much off topic with game development, but you've got some great resources if you're in Columbus now. Frank with Startup Columbus, and of course he's been around with Columbus Makes It, providing a lot of great services for Columbus for quite some time. You've got Score in Columbus as well. So I mean, the resources are out there. So if you're considering small business and working for yourself, don't think you're in it alone. There's a lot of people out in the community that want to see you succeed. That want to see Columbus succeed. So reach out to those business owners. They may not necessarily be able to directly help you, but maybe they know somebody that can. So thank you, guys.
Thank you for your interest in the Georgia Game Developers Association's Patreon campaign. The Georgia Game Developers Association is a nonprofit that focuses on educating both game developers and fans on what is involved in making great games. For years we have put on live events to do just that, attracting some of the greatest thinkers in game development to share their secrets. Recently, we began our live streaming channel on Mixer to expand our ability to reach those developers and gamers far beyond our state. We have seen some initial success, but we are also hearing a lot of requests for more. More workshops, more in-depth interviews, more first looks at indie games, more giveaways, and more great streams. Your support will allow us to do just that. Even at starting levels, we both recognize your support and seek your input on what to stream. At higher levels, you can actually help shape our content, gaining priority access to our speakers, the chance to share announcements, and, at the highest level, running ads and promotions for all our viewers to see. So join now to get the inside scoop on game development and to help shape one of the best game dev channels on the net.